care to speak on any of those new business items, feel free to do so during the general public comment, which I will be opening up in a minute, assuming we adopt the agenda as proposed. So with that, I'll have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll proceed according to the agenda. Next item is to approve the minutes from our June 20th meeting. I have reviewed those minutes and had no comments. Anybody have any? Yes, sir, Mr. Perry.
On page 3, it says that Mr. Parrish questioned Mr. Timberlake was to the left or the right of the property, his property. And it says here he said it was to the right of the property, but it's to the left of the property, the left side. So change the right to the left. That's the only thing I thought.
All right. Thank you for that. Any other comments or corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
A motion to approve the minutes as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain since I wasn't here for the meeting.
I will abstain as well.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the general public comment period. As I mentioned a moment ago, there will be a total of 5 opportunities to speak tonight. I ask that if you are here to opine upon any of the items listed under public hearing, that is the Zook Tourist Home, the Risk and Strategic Management application, the Halberg applicant for adaptive use, or the telecommunication tower, that you wait for that point in the agenda to speak. On other items or anything else that's on your mind, I hereby open the public comment, and I ask, as always, that you identify your name and your address or the district you're in, and please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We've got a lot of people here tonight. I'm going to try to be reasonable, but also make sure that we get through this agenda. And so I will add to that general request that we try really hard to not repeat things that either you or the person before you has already said. If you more or less want to kind of reaffirm what someone has said, you can do that without repeating everything they said. And I think that we would all appreciate that tonight to be able to cover. Okay, we're also tonight, in the interest of keeping track of things, I would ask that you come forward and speak at the public microphone for any comments. And with that, I will hereby open the general public comment period. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, if you would like to speak, perhaps you could come up and go ahead and maybe form a line. I know this is a little awkward, but if we have to wait for everybody to shimmy across the aisle, we'll be here that much longer. So.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am Sandra Renzi. I live on Benvenue, and I received this notice as an adjoining neighbor. The fact that the Williams family is an example of a great Rappahannock family who have been good citizens and neighbors is undisputed. I have great respect for Mary Williams, and I've never known Eddie and Karen to be anything but wonderful people. I believe the Williams have been the ones in the past to snowplow Benvenue Road, clear off down trees, and in general take care of the road. I wish nothing but great success for Greg and his booming business. I do, however, have grave concerns when it comes to the nature of Greg's business operating out of his Benvenue residence. It is too often I've turned a corner only to find a very large truck loaded with lumber either in the middle of the road or otherwise causing me to quickly change course, frequently stop. My daily worry is that a serious accident will occur, and having grandchildren already driving and about to drive compels me to implore you to reconsider this permit application. The trucks I've seen on this road entering and exiting Greg's driveway range from large dump trucks to 18-wheelers and even double flatbed logging trucks. I have also encountered a tractor with bucket filled with logs ambling down the middle of the road. Please view the various photos I have recently been able to take of different kinds of trucks I have encountered. I'll pass them out later. I think you already know that Benvenue Road is narrow, winding, and no shoulders. As far as the specifics of this permit application, I do not understand how Greg's operation comes under the contractor's definition that you have used, Rappahannock County's definition. I don't believe any of these things that he does fit the description of what he does on his property, and I don't believe it can be considered agriculture either, because the wood is brought here from other locations and not harvested from the property. In 2010, Greg was approved by the county to move, quote, the vast majority of his operation to the new ECAL location on Route 211. As we have waited to see this become a reality, we instead have seen a vast buildup of his business in his front yard on Benvenue Road. It is my understanding, however, that a couple of years ago, Greg purchased a 5-acre parcel directly on Route 211 with access for both directions and very close to his current retail location on the same highway. It seems that trucks could safely and without objection come and go instead from that location. I hope that Greg does the right thing and takes his entire business to his 2 Route 211 locations, avoiding potential accidents and calamities. Similarly, I hope that you, who have been entrusted with the safety of all county residents, will do the right thing and see this review as an opportunity to correct past permits, which have been largely abused. If you do nothing and a car accident due to this operation were to occur, the responsibility would fall squarely on your shoulders. Thank you.
Hello, Anita Ramos, Hampton District. As many of you in the room know, my husband, Lee Folsom, passed away last month, and I'm here to keep channeling him, shall we say. I want to remind the board, in memory of both Reed and also Beth Hunter, that water quality and quantity in this county is very important now and forever for all of us. So I hope you always keep that in mind as you do your tasks here. Second of all, another thing I kind of promised him I would do is, he was a government employee for 22 years. Very proud of the fact that he worked for the U.S. government. At this time, I'd like to, if the commission will indulge me, will everyone in the room who has ever been in the services or currently in the services or has worked as a career federal employee, please stand up. I want to thank you very much for the care you have given our country. Thank you. And last, Rappahannock County is rarely, an in place, so to speak, except for maybe the inn itself. This past week's real estate section in the Washington Post has a whole big, huge article, front page and all, about murals and how they're the innest thing now in so many places. Some of these murals I don't want to have in our neighborhood, but the fact is that it's an in thing and is catching hold all over the place, and I want to share this article with you all, so here it is.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Mann. I live on Benvenue Road, 490 Benvenue Road. Just wanted to echo a few of the comments that we heard from Sandra earlier. In fact, she said it so nicely, I really shouldn't be up here reiterating, but I have a couple of points to make on the issue having to do with the logging operation on Benvenue Road. I also am very comfortable with the Williams families and see them as being friends, but I do believe they've gone a little bit too far as the amount of volume and trucks that are involved with supplying them with logs that they will cut and then split and then send back out on trucks. Safety, Sandra mentioned, is very important. My education was highway engineering curriculum and civil engineer. The Benvenue Road is not set for those kind of trucks. It's not set for other big trucks that truck cut through as well. And what we're trying to do here is work with VDOT, separate from this, to get some limitations on the through trucks that are allowed to come through that road, because it's got too many sharp turns, too many blind corners. In fact, just the other day when I pulled out of my driveway and went north toward Flint Hill, went around the first curve, he was a tractor trailer. It wasn't a logging truck. Tractor trailer coming through, cheating in the middle of the road on that curve. I had all I could do to get over and into the ditch to just miss the back end of his trailer, which he was dragging around the corner because he was cheating. He was way, the road is wide anyhow, so. The key thing for me is safety on that road. There's a lot of people that throw trash out on that road. I gotta believe almost all of those cut-through people, the residents would never do that. But the cut-through people throw a lot of trash out, I mean a lot of trash. And in the springtime, I'm always out there. I've got 2,100 feet of frontage on that road, and I do that plus a lot more. And what I see happening on that road in the way of people exhibiting driving skills is atrocious. So to have these logging trucks come down just adds to that problem. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to limit that if possible. What I see as I pass by the facility that they have now is very neat piles. It's always been neat. It's always been, for me, rather quiet. But it looks bad, and it is a commercial operation in my view. I don't know how you could argue that it would be an agricultural thing. I think the definition of agricultural is it's got to have been grown on the property and then brought out. These are coming in and boarded, worked on, and then sent back out again. So our view, and some of our other neighbors' views, is that this operation should not be allowed to continue there. If they can get it out on 211, that would be perfect. We hope they have great success wherever they go, but that location is just not right for this operation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, I'm Bill Freitag with Hampton District, and I also have a few words. I'm not trying to try to repeat what other people have said, but I just want to point out one little thing. The agenda calls for an SUP review. This is an SEP review. Just to kind of keep the record straight. And speaking of SEPs, it's an application, and it was granted as, of all things, a contractor's office, shop, and material storage yard. And I just want to read what our zoning law says. I need my glasses. I gotta remember to put them on. Contractor's office, shops, material storage yards. Establishment for construction and or repair of buildings, roads, and utility lines. Installation and servicing of heating, cooling, and electrical equipment. Flooring, painting, plumbing, roofing, and tiling, and or excavating. Does that sound like anything that's happening in my next door neighbor's yard? And I might mention, just for your information, our current method is we send notification to neighbors and other people across the street, right? Well, Mr. Williams' operation is sandwiched between two other Williams properties. And although I butt on one of those Williams properties, I don't get notified. I think that might be something you might want to look at to review. And with that, I'll turn it over to whoever's next.
Hi, I'm Patty Hardy from Hampton District. I also live on Benvenue Road. And if I were sitting up there, if I were you, I would be thinking, how do I split this baby in half? I want to respect Greg Williams' business and the Williams family, but at the same time, there are safety issues and upset neighbors. Well, Sandra Renzi suggested in her comments a way for you to do that. In 2010, the county granted Mr. Williams a separate, completely separate special exception permit to move his operation down to the old ECAL property, which is at Richmond Road and 211. At the time, his attorney was Mike Brown. We all know Mike Brown. He wrote a letter along with the application in which he stated, as you know, Greg is presently engaged in a significant tree and landscaping business which is operated off his personal property and residence located at 309 Benvenue Road. The primary purpose of this special exception permit application from 2010 for a contractor's office shop yard use is to permit Greg to move the vast majority of that business to the subject property, the old Benvenue property, the old ECAL property. Mike Brown closes his letter by reiterating that point. By relocating the substantial portion of his existing business to this location on US 211 and Virginia Route 729, we believe this is in keeping with several of the policies expressed in the Rappahannock County Comprehensive Plan. This purpose was reiterated in the ads that were published in the newspapers. It's the same language. So I'm pretty confident that you plan to move this forward to the Board of Supervisors. But if you do, I would ask that you maybe consider two conditions. One, to enforce that permit that was issued and approved in 2010, authorizing him to move his operation to that location of the ECAL. And two, that maybe you require a 2-year review of the permit issued in 2007, the one that's up for review tonight, to make sure that he's making substantial progress on moving his operation off of Benvenue. By holding him to the 2010 permit, you accomplish a lot of things. You protect and honor Greg's business and what the Williamses have contributed. You take the logging trucks off of Benvenue Road, there'd be no reason for them to go along there anymore. You protect and honor the neighbors' concerns about safety, view shed, and property values, and you do the county's business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Anyone else care to speak on the general comment? Again, I encourage you to come up in the queue so we're moving forward as much as we can. And I'll remind also, I know everyone has more or less done that, but please direct any comments to the commission.
My name's Eddie Williams, and I live on 729 there. I do appreciate and understand these people's concerns about the traffic, but I've been on that road for 50 years. I do remember quite a few accidents, none of which involve a large truck. It's always, in the past, been a passenger vehicle and speed. I have no reason to know why anyone would not approve of his business there. He has moved the majority of his business down to Benvenue. His site is kept clean, organized, neat. He has an attractive fence along the entire route of 729, a stone and board fence. 90% of the time when I drive by, I don't even look any further than the fence. The fence is very attractive. I appreciate your time and hope that you'll move for his renewal. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, anyone else care to speak?
Tracy Abdullah, and I live in Amosville in the Hampton District. I'm here tonight to ask you, the members of the Planning Commission, to not recommend approval or the extension of this special exemption permit for Greg Williams Contractor's Yard Shop Office, as it has been labeled. Beyond the fact that this lot is an eyesore and an unsightly storage yard, the number one concern for anyone who travels this road is the safety hazard that this operation creates on Benvenue Road. As stated before, the road is very narrow, windy, and is not meant for the heavy logging commercial trucks that routinely make deliveries to this commercial lot. Another road concern that I have is the entrance that's being used, both for an entrance in and an exit out of this lot. Has it been approved by VDOT? This operation work yard is located on the Williams Farm, next to the Williams Farm, which is zoned ag. I have respect for the Williams family and their family farm, but that doesn't change the fact of why we're here tonight. This business and operation is clearly not related in any way to ag use. The logs are not being harvested from the property, and they're coming from, I'm assuming they're coming from other counties as well. And the profit is going personally to Greg. The hours of operation for this lot exceed the original permit requested, which was 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I drive that street often, regularly, 7, 8 o'clock, and there's still activity going on in that work yard. The original exemption approved required that all trailer trucks equipment be stored in the rear of the property. And while at any given time there is heavy commercial trucks and equipment parked right along Benvenue Road. There are also setback requirements for from the public road and the property line that are not being followed by Greg Williams with the special exemption permit. There were also screening requirements to screen the operation from the road, and that has never been provided, with the exception of the beautiful fence. I agree with you, Mr. Williams, it is a beautiful fence. However, when I drive by it, I don't get to admire the beautiful fence because of the very large, enormous piles of wood and mulch and other things that are stored on this lot. My concern is also at what point, if allowed continuous use, we're now up. His renewal was due last year. So he's now had an extra year of operations on this property. And at what time does it become a legal existing condition or a by right use of this property? It's clearly not ag-related. Clearly it has not been in full compliance with the code or special exemption requirements. And I don't even know why it's even being considered. Greg Williams had several objections from citizens in 2012 to this special exemption application, and all concerns and complaints are still remaining, with additional concerns added. He has made no effort in 5+ years to address these continued concerns and complaints. He's also never been in full compliance with his special exemption permit. The permit should certainly not be recommended for approval and certainly not be allowed to continue. And may I also add that, it's over his 5 years. This is now 6 years. Some in our county may see Greg as a success story, as his attorney told the Board of Supervisors at his public hearing in 2012 when this permit was approved. But there are many of us in the county who strongly disagree. He may support the community in various ways. He may be a lifelong resident, but that does not give him the right to not follow our laws and our zoning ordinance. I own the property in Amosville that is next to the property owned by Greg, where he uses that property as a heavy commercial use with large piles of gravel, asphalt millings, dirt, junk, untagged vehicles. We have the back windows have been busted out, and a huge scrap metal pile. This property too is zoned ag, and this property has no special exemption use, and he's been using it commercially as in non-compliance with the zoning ordinance. I have contacted the zoning office and made an official complaint, and I'm waiting to see the property be in compliance with the ag zoning ordinance. This property is the, I believe, what's being referenced to the property that he owns on 211. I'm the neighboring property. It doesn't have an easy in or out exit. There is one very small, narrow driveway, which his trucks, his regular pickup trucks with trailers can barely fit into that. He's already using his commercial. He's got this very large piles of all the things that I've just listed. And that is going to create another very huge concern for our county. And I refer to I would like to also point out that the lot that he leased on 211 and 729 for the Greg Williams Tree Service, that is also not in compliance with his permit requirements that were set forth for that property and his use on that property. And I refer to these other properties that I've mentioned because they're relevant, because it clearly shows his continued non-compliance and disrespect to our county ordinance and our county citizens and his neighbors. Our county prides itself on the peaceful scenic views and night skies. This commercial woodlot, as well as the other properties owned or occupied by Greg that I mentioned, with scrap piles, junk vehicles, spotlights that blind drivers as they drive down Route 211 at night, unlawful signs displayed in the median of Route 211.
Ma'am, I hope you are.
Yes, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. They're certainly not scenic, and they certainly don't show his support of the community. It shows disrespect to our county, to our citizens, and especially our laws and ordinance. The special exemption permit should not be recommended or approved simply because of his continued non-compliance and disrespect to the county ordinance. At some point, the county has to
Mr.
say...
Chairman, point of order, this thing has gone on for 10, 15 minutes. You mentioned 3 minutes.
It's
3 minutes?
10?
We're going to
Okay.
be here
Let
all
me say one
night.
last
We
thing.
will be here all night like this.
I totally expected you to say that, Mr. Henry. So, in closing, I will complete with saying, there has to be enough of the good old boy system within our county. A long residence isn't okay. One last thing. I would like to say that some citizens in our county think they're the cream of the crop, when in fact they're thorny weeds in our field.
Mr. Chairman,
And we need
Mr.
to-
Chairman, this is not a character assassination here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. You may be a part of the good old boys
Is
as
there
well.
anyone else who would care to speak during the public comment?
Do you want to hear from Mr. Williams in this portion or during this?
So just to be clear, as I mentioned at the outset, this is not a public hearing on this application. What's before us tonight is simply to determine if such a public hearing is called for. So we'll be at this show again if we decide to move forward. So, I can't stop you from if you have a public comment, but this is certainly not the...
I won't be long, I guarantee. My name's Frank Reynolds, and Mr. Williams asked me to come and try to clear up a couple of things on this matter. I was there in 2007 when you originally approved this. Then it was reviewed in 2012. And one of the things that was approved in 2007 was several pages of the supplement of application, which was presented by Mr. Williams about the operations that would be used there, which included firewood, logs, wood chips, mulch, hours of operation, hours behind which you would not run equipment, hours before which you would not run equipment in the mornings, except during the hours of snow removal, because he also operates that. Those are in the files and people can look at them. I won't go through all of them, but that's what was approved in 2012, the exact operation that he's using. I've only been here since 1980, so I'm not local. But I can tell you this, it didn't take me very long to know that Benvenue Road is a narrow, twisty, windy road. And there have been tractors and farm trucks and trailers and horse trailers on that road long before any of us were here. And what happened is, there was a special exception permit that was granted because it is agriculture related. Is it a commercial operation? Of course it is. Of course it is. That's why you needed a special exception permit. If it had been totally his agriculture, his, right there, he wouldn't have needed a permit. He would have done it all himself. So, what he's done is he's followed the permit exactly the way it was. His entrance was $18,000 to create the entrance and get it VDOT approved, which it was. The screening, which was agreed to in 2007, was removed in 2012 by the county. It's not required. because he was going to build a building there too and decided not to, so decided screening wasn't necessary. He has operated his business appropriately, at a financial advantage to him and his family. And then in 2010, Greg was such a success that he was able to take his expanding business and move it out on 211. There was nothing in the 2000 permit, regardless of this statement read about Mr. Brown, that said they were going to move the whole operation. That's not what happened. But what has happened is that Mr. Williams does not run retail out of the Benvenue. Now, if he has 2 cords of wood to bring to me, he'll load it up on his trucks and bring it to me there. But if I'm going to go buy wood, I go up and buy it at 211, just as everyone else does. He has operated this as an agriculturally related enterprise. He has done a great job of success here. He's done everything that the permit has required him to do. And I'm sorry, but not all agricultural enterprises are pretty. Now, some people might think all those logs, they are pretty. But telling him he has to move that because you think it's ugly is like telling his father he can only grow yellow peaches because they're pretty. I mean, that's just not the way agriculture is. What we're asking you to do is go ahead and recommend approval for the permit again because it is an agriculture-related enterprise. And all of us who moved here because we love this county and because the agriculture is what made it look the way it is. This is not Waterford. This is Rappahannock County. So we ask you to please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any other public comments? Great, thank you. With that, I will then close the general public comment and we will move on to items of new business with apologies for those who have been waiting on these scheduled public hearings. The first item is a special hearing for special use permit 180404. This is the Zook tourist home that was tabled from our June 20th meeting. Before I refer to the applicant or open the public hearing, Ms. Summers, do you have anything to say about this application?
The Board of Zoning Appeals did hear this public hearing at last month's meeting. They have tabled it as well. They did recommend that the applicant reach back out to the health department, in which they have, and also a notarized consent from the landowner in which they have presented to our office and was emailed out to the entire commission earlier today. The applicant is here. If any questions, the commissioner's have.
Thank you. I believe the issue that we've been dealing with is the fact that the driveway is at least partially on the septic system, and that's been the general nature of the discussion. So before I open up the comment period, the applicants are here, I believe. Would you like to add anything? Yes. I don't know. If you have questions, appreciate it. With that, I'll open the public hearing on this special use. Well, it's only a public hearing. It sounds like it was advertised for a public hearing, so I suppose we're having one. Is there anyone here to speak on this application? Great. With that, I'll close the public hearing and turn to our colleagues here. Ms. Mead, I believe this application is in your district, and I will turn to you first.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We asked last month that we get written approval from the health department for what they were proposing. I don't see that we have written approval from the health department. So it sounds like you've reached out to them. With that said, I see no reason to continue to hold it up here. We could forward it with our recommendation of approval with our substandard conditions subject to written approval from the health department, rather than keep them held up here at the planning commission level.
Thank you. Rather than go around, could I ask if any other commissioners would like to be heard on this application?
Yes. Having been at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, it seemed the critical aspect that caused it to be tabled was that the owner of the property hadn't signed the application, or it hadn't been made in such a way as to make sure that the owner was actually the one who was applying. If that problem has been remedied, the problem that the Board of Zoning Appeals had with it has been solved.
We got that late this evening from the
Thank you. Would any other commissioners like to comment on this? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Yes, I move we recommend approval of this application, subject to the standard conditions we've been recommending with these types of applications. The maximum number of occupants shall not exceed 2 persons per bedroom. However, under no circumstance shall the number of occupants exceed that allowed by the building code. Second condition, subject to Virginia Department of Health certification, that this approach is adequate, and that the rental unit will contain working smoke detectors, carbon monoxide, fire extinguisher, and emergency contact list.
Thank you, Ms. Mead. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye as well. Any opposed? We have aye votes, or you hear aye? Ms. Sillo, are you voting or abstaining?
Abstain, because I don't
Abstain.
have it.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to the second item on the agenda, Special Exception 180504, the Risk and Strategic Management Training Facility. I believe Mr. Eason and Mr. Scythe are here. Before we go, would you like to comment on this?
You have before you a special exception permit for a private school and outdoor training. The property is located on Sturgeon Lane in Amesville. It is 84 acres in size, and the property is zoned agricultural and is currently vacant. The applicant has proposed a buffer of at least 800 feet from any home and a buffer of 500 feet for all training from the property lines. The applicant proposes 2 minibuses for all participants and will offer training courses once to twice each month. There will be no firing range located on this property. I will point out this property is currently located in an agricultural and forestal district.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Any additions or updates from the applicant? Yes, sir.
Nothing extra?
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing, again, with the same requests of earlier, perhaps better to now. Would anyone like to speak on this application? Yes, sir. If you would, please come forward. And again, if you're going to be next, please come up. And again, address us, state your name and location.
Yes, my name is Timmy Jones of the Jackson District. I'm a adjacent landowner. Sturgeon's Lane is a private lane. Page 2 of the application states that the proposed participant is supplying minibuses that will not impact the traffic on the road. Page 12, Part 7 lists additional vehicles could be traveling on the training site. Catering trucks, role players, trainers, septic haulers, medic service, and tourism. The multitude and additional vehicles will have an impact on the road. If police and fire and rescue and medical emergencies are allowed to use this as a training area, that would bring in more traffic on Sturgeon's. His summary sheet, page 517, states, I quote, "Self-contained latrines will be used out of sight with zero environmental risk. This is a temporary measure," end quote. Page 12 states that under wastewater, I quote, "There will be no toilets on site." A little confused, but we use 100% self-contained portable portaloos. I'm assuming that's porta potties. The toilets, these will be used out of sight. This is a short-term solution, and permanent toilets, if recommended and permitted by the zoning board, will be constructed, end quote. Permanent toilets require water, well, electric. What happened to the outdoor training that's listed on the summary sheet? The plan states intentions for the building permanent septic in future buildings in his application, yet this summary sheet says no schools will be constructed. What type of building is he planning on building in the future? Page 11, part 6 states, I quote, "The use of land will have zero negative impact upon environmental status of the land," end quote. The following negative impacts: additional traffic on Sturgeons, unattended toilets left in the woods for bears or other animals to overturn and spill the chemicals. As a construction superintendent, at the end of the job, my portable toilets usually takes about 2 weeks to be picked up and removed after called off rent. And I don't know if he plans on leaving them out there full time or not. Proposed vehicles left in the woods to rust. They were talking about doing tactical stuff on cars. This displacement of wildlife, interruption of the Virginia state hunting season for residents, which I am. How can you enhance the environment that states on page 3, paragraph 8, when you are interrupting it? On RSM's website, there's a level 4, level 5 training program scheduled for October 15th through the 17th, 2018. 2018 Rappahannock County deer season, archery season, starts October 6th, 2018. Warm months in Rappahannock also includes April and May, which would be interrupting the spring turkey season. I oppose this application because of the information in the application is contradicting and does not include all the training programs information shown on RSM's website. I do not want to see this property value decline. I don't want to see our property value decline or our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Hello, I'm Joyce Jones, Jackson District adjacent landowner. I understand and appreciate the safety awareness, armed aggressor threat, and anti-terrorism training that RSM provides, but I do not believe that this service is appropriate use of rural forestry land in Rappahannock County. The following are discrepancies that I found in their application. The summary sheet, page 5, item 5, states, I quote, "No school building will be constructed that is only for outdoor training," end quote. Yet the application, special exemption, page 2 states, I quote, "All building existing and future will be in accordance with area restrictions," end quote. Mr. Blythe told Adams family that RSM will be constructing movable buildings to represent villages. Example, the African village and the Iran village. Why are these contradicting statements? The summary sheet, page 5, item 7, states, I quote, "Training courses last 1 day each and are run for the summer months," end quote. The calendar defines summer months from June through September. Page 7, part 2 states, I quote, "The training frequency and group sizes are not high, and our model reflects 1 course per month during the warmer weather," end quote. Virginia can have warm weather from March through December. What are the actual training dates? Again, why are the contradictions? Summary sheet, page 5, item 7, I quote earlier, states training courses last 1 day. Yet page 7, part 2 states, I quote, "Currently, the frequency of training is 1 course every 1 to 2 months, lasting between 1 to 2 days. We hope to increase this to perhaps 2 courses per month during the warmer weather, leading to 2 to 3 days of use per month," end quote. Why the difference in the course length on 2 different pages of the same application? I think I can answer that. The application only included training information on RSM's level 4 training program. His website also has a level 5 training program, which is 2 days of field training. Why was level 5 information left out of this application? Page 7, part 2 lists all the activities that would be held on the training ground for level 4 training. None of the listed activities would require wooded land. They all could be done anywhere, including a large warehouse. This application addresses noise on page 10. States a blank state plan on shooting should have a 0 effect on any animals. Chris Williams, a 25-year law officer, spoke at a previous hearing for this school and stated he was familiar with blanks and said they would be allowed. The application mentions pets and livestock when discussing noise, but fails to mention the effect on any livestock, which is abundant in our county. The application does not consider how sound travels in rural areas. We can hear our neighbors in the front yard, people talking on the power line, and activities at the hunt club. We can hear cattle mooing east of South Pose and south of Sturgeon Lane, which is 1,500 feet away. We can also hear truck traffic on Highway 211, which is 4 miles away. The talking of 30 to 40 students and instruction of this training will be heard by adjacent landowners for the 9 hours of operations from 8 to 5. The SBA profile in the application shows that their status is active. Currently, the SBA website shows that RSM's SBA profile is expired. Why submit an application to this commission when your status is expired? Also on their SBA profile application, it shows that Kristen Blythe is the COO and Michael Blythe is the CEO. Page 6, Part 1 states in multiple places that Kristen is the CEO and Michael is the COO. Why the difference in which one's correct? I oppose this application for several reasons. First, because of the conflicting statements of the application. What are the true intentions and plans of Mr. Blythe for this land? And second, I believe that the plans will displace wildlife, which decreases the serenity of our rural country culture. The very reasons that residents purchase land in this county.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Anyone else like to speak on this application? Please do try to queue up, trying to move this along. And also, at some point, we're going to have to crank down on the timing if we keep pushing it, trying to convene it, but put me in a tough spot. Please try to keep it close. Yes, sir.
I'll take up 30 minutes. Hi, I'm Roy Ludwigson. I live at 117 Surgeon Lane, right across the road from where they want to build this school. I guess there's several concerns, most of them very eloquently presented already. My question is, why do we want to put a commercial enterprise on a private road? No one has addressed the maintenance of this road. Currently, the people that live on it maintain that road. We need to have some viable way of including these people if their permit is approved, which we are opposed to, by the way. They talk about a school. If I'm not mistaken, the right-of-way for a school is 50 feet minimum. On Church and Lane, there are sections of it where the right-of-way is less than 50 feet. It just happens the last 3 properties, myself, Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Cohen, we do have 50 foot in front of our property. But going further towards South Bowes Road, there's an area of only 30 feet. This was an old state or county road that was abandoned years ago and turned over to private landowners. Unless the state wants to take over maintenance of this thing, which I doubt that the state would, then we are violently opposed to this thing. It affects safety because it is narrow, it's one lane. You can safely pass if you mind your speed. We've never had an accident that I know of on the road, but there is potential for it. And with the increased traffic and stuff like that, we're worried about it. The school construction, it's been stated there will be, and then they said there won't be. We need to find out because we're worried about construction noise. Even during construction as well as after construction. The idea of having security training using weapons, I've heard everything from cap gun to air rifles to something else. That may be okay, except we need to know exactly where this is going to occur, what the hours are, and I believe that's already been addressed. And there's several other issues along that line. But bottom line for us, and I'm speaking on behalf of my family and 2 next door neighbors, we are opposed to it. And we don't see any reason for this thing to be approved.
Yes, sir.
Ron Hackle from Jackson District. Mr. Blythe is running a commercial business. He's looking to expand his business into Rappahannock in order to expand his business. His proposal right now is for very limited usage of the property. But as any person that is running a business, they're trying to increase their business. And so I would say that if you are inclined to approve this application, that it be approved on a very limited basis, and that any expansion on that usage, they would be required to come back to you in order to expand that. And secondary, it needs to be limited in that because he will be the owner of the property, that he not be allowed to sublet the property to other folks for activities that may be associated or not associated, but on a basis that might be disturbing to the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. Anyone else care to speak? Not, yes, well, I'll close the public comment, and Mr. Blight will give you a brief window to respond or speak to the Planning Commission. Anything you'd like to say, having heard some of these comments? If you could clear up any minute.
I agree with the chap from the green hat, absolutely, and that's one of the things that we've suggested, that we keep it in very narrow bounds so that we can't exceed beyond what is approved by the zoning board. Just to clarify a couple of points, one person stood up and said, I'm going to stop people killing the animals. The other person said, we're going to disturb the wildlife. I'm not sure which is the most preferred. Like any landowner, landowners wouldn't allow other people to come through and kill animals. So, we would have the right to kind of stop that. Unless people approach us, then we'd probably be more than welcome to, or willing to have a chat. Like any good marriage, my wife is in charge. She's the CEO, and I'm the COO. Just for clarity, we're a small women-owned veteran business, and if you know anything...
You list on 275.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yeah. So that is the status. We're a small women-owned veteran business. We provide leadership training for people going to hostile environments. We've been very specific. We run a couple of courses which require interaction. I would oppose anybody who doesn't know the subject, the technical subject, to tell us where we need to run the training, in a warehouse, because it would be physically impossible to do it in that environment. We listened to the zoning board last time where an application was refused, and we went to a heavily forested zone, which was almost twice as big as the original location. You have to be Superman to be able to hear a blank firing weapon in a forest. Okay, I was a Royal Marine Commander Major for 15 years. I commanded US military as well. I'm telling you now as an expert, you cannot hear a blank firing weapon in the wood. Certainly where there is a buffer zone of 500 feet of woodland. You can't do it. It is impossible. Okay, so you're not going to hear it. I'd also suggest the fact that there is a slaughterhouse on the road, which is already a business. 2 minibuses is not going to make any difference to traffic whatsoever for 1 or 2 days of the month. That is nonsense. Okay? It is absolute nonsense. There will be light traffic, they'll come in the morning, they'll leave in the afternoon, and that will be the extent of it. Right? And we will be contributing to the local economy. We will be, any food, we won't have catering trucks. We'll go and grab some sandwiches, we'll buy it from the local business, we'll bring it in the morning, and that will be it. In terms of the toilets, we will take the advice of the zoning committee. We offered portable toilets. If they feel that we should build a toilet on the ground because it's better for the environment, then we will do so. But we'll take the advice of the zoning committee for what is best for the land. And I see this as nothing but a positive for the Rappahannock community. And it is good because it's training charities going into high-risk environments to help beleaguered nations, women, children affected by natural disasters, terrorism, civil disorder, to go out and help those individuals. So this is actually a good thing. And we're a small business. We've been a small business for 10 years. And we will not be getting to be a big business, and if you provide the restrictions, we will not be able to exceed them legally. So you will be containing what we can do or can't do. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Blight, could you please address in the scenario, if you understand your application before us today, does not include the construction of toilets, but are you in a position to talk about your intentions for removing and emptying those, or is that something you're not prepared to?
No, absolutely. We'll remove them immediately after the training. Okay, so somebody will come in, we'll do a day of training, we'll remove the porta toilets. We probably won't do training for another month or 2, I'm sorry if I don't understand the summer months. We normally use the phrase dry months. So that's not us trying to hide anything. We're just saying we normally do it when it's warm and dry, because people don't like getting wet and cold when they're running around the woods.
And finally, would you comment on the level 5 versus level 4 question?
Yeah, so we said the training courses run between 1 to 2 days. A level 4 is 1 day, a level 5 is 2 days. Okay, if you're asking for all of the other training we do, we have 450 different courses. We're only interested in doing one course, and there are 2 versions of it. A level 4, which is 1 day in the woods, a level 5, which is 2 days in the woods. The vast majority of training is a level 4. That's probably 90% of what we do is a level 4 training, which is 1 day, and we normally run it once a month. If you look at our training calendar, you will see how often we run it. We cancelled the September course. So we probably run 5 courses this year, which would amount to 7 days in the woods. I can't see how that would impact the local community at all.
Thank you, Mr. Dwight. Ms. B, this is your lucky night.
Thanks. So we have seen this application before, and we did recommend denial at that time, and the applicant withdrew his application in response to our concerns and looked for another parcel. This is a much larger parcel, and we're not going to make everybody happy, but based on the public hearing, you didn't have the opposition that you heard last time. I have drafted some conditions should the Planning Commission want to entertain making a recommendation of approval. This is just a recommendation. The Board of Supervisors makes the final decision. But some of these things I would like to discuss if anyone else is inclined to do that. I don't know if you want to go around the table or if we just want to talk about some of the conditions.
Sure, I would like to give each of the, well, if you would like, well, why don't we wait, hear from each of the commissioners, and then if you're prepared to make a motion, we can talk about your conditions. Mr. Parrish, why don't we go this way?
Oh, well, I mean, this is a heck of a lot better site than the first one, which was denied. And I rode back in there and looked around and saw the area and suppose if they parked off the road. I mean, everything's relative. The traffic, the use of it, all of that. And I bumped into one neighbor on the way out, stopped, asked them if he knew about it. They did. Asked them what they thought about it, and they said they were all for it. And I don't know about the family that runs the slaughterhouse. I don't think they're here tonight, at any rate. So this resistance to the approval is new to me, and so I'm still trying to process that.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. I know, Ms. Silla, you haven't had much of an opportunity, but you bring up any issues on this application?
The only thing that I had questions on was the one neighbor said that they maintain the highway. And if he does come about, is he plan on being part of that?
Thank you, that's a good point. Well, actually, if we would, maybe Mr. Blight, could you address the road maintenance
Absolutely,
question?
Mr. Mighty to contribute to the maintenance of the road, no problem at all.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. Mr. Byrd?
It seems to me that this is a reasonable and tolerable use of the property, and that to deny a use such as this is basically to deny the use of the property itself. That one needs to put up against it what would happen were it a farm, what would happen if a house was built there, what would happen if any number of very ordinary uses were adopted for that piece of property. And it seems to me that the use as articulated is less than almost any other ordinary use. And that to find it to require the strictures on that property that have been articulated at this meeting does not seem to me to be a reasonable complaint.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Mr. Coleman?
we seem to have at least settled road maintenance. I had not heard any negative comments about this until just now, so I'm processing that. I understand the neighbor's concern. I also understand what Mr. Bird just said, which was that if you had a home there, for instance, you might have children that are out playing all the time, or you might have somebody who would eventually timber the property. So there's all kinds of conflicts with just about anything that happens there. So I'm always sensitive to the neighbors and how I would feel. I also try to be reasonable into what would be a reasonable use of the property. So that's all I have to say at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Mr. Henry.
Presently, I guess one of the people that spoke can answer to this. Presently, do you all have a road maintenance committee in there, or is it kind of a hodgepodge where one person does part of it and then another group of people does the other part?
No, we all contribute.
Everybody contributes into one pot?
It's not a monetary pot. For example, I remove snow and do some of the road maintenance during the summer months. Other people have tractors. The Adams family, for one, helps with snow removal. They also help with grading and the upkeep of it. When we need gravel, we all pool together, and whatever the bill comes to, we split it up together.
So how much gravel do y'all use a year?
That's hard to say because the power line just put in a fairly new bed about a year or 2 years ago, and we have not needed any on it since that particular time. But with the last storms that we had, there is an area beyond the power line going up towards the last families that is going to need some. So I couldn't tell you how many truckloads or anything like that.
So before the power company came in there, what were y'all spending? How much do you do per year in gravel? $200, $300?
Per family, possibly, yeah.
Okay. So Mr. Smythe can probably figure on maybe being asked for $400 to $500 a year in gravel. Unless the bottom falls out of the road.
Yeah, you might say
that's
that.
reasonable to think of.
I'll put at least double what they pay as a family.
So y'all work together as a group, because I had heard that it wasn't kind of structured too well on the road maintenance.
It's not a structure, if you will. We have a verbal agreement, and the families that live there together, we have to have egress and ingress. So it's in our collective interest to go out there and maintain this road. During the bad snowstorms, if we don't do something and we have an emergency, who's going to get in? Rescue squad can't. So it's in our best interest to keep that road clean, and we do that without arguments and without any discussion.
I just wanted some communications here in the public so that everybody was kind of on the same page as we move forward with this in the road department. So, I guess too, just as a point of clarification, this does not prevent the applicant, just for the public here to know, that if they want to build a residence on the property, they can still build a residence on the property. So that's just, a fact that that's a right to build this property. Even if the training issue gets approved, he still has the right to build a house and use a house. It's anything that you would be able to do on your property too. And Holly, I guess on the list of draft conditions, we kind of say 2 days, but we don't say 2 days per month. And I think we need to be specific in
The very first one says 2 training events per month.
But that doesn't mean that that's one. That doesn't say 2 days. A training event, the way it's worded, could be a period of 3 days.
2 days.
But it says 2 days down here, but that doesn't say per month. So
Okay.
I just want to tie it down.
We can certainly combine them.
I just want to tie it down where it's absolutely said, use of the property for this facility is 2 days per month. So there's no issue there. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henry. Yes, Mr. Ford, you have something else to add?
Well, on this list of draft conditions, I'm presuming that the conditions as already in the application
would also apply, or you just?
Well, the very first one captures what is in the application, so it shall be granted for the purpose and uses in the application, except for I've got a wrong
Thank you.
training there. There's some things in the statement of justification that can't be enforced. Example, he says 800 feet from any home. He can't enforce that because that's off his property. A home on another property could come closer, but you can enforce distances from the property line. So some of the things I'm looking for input is, he had said 1 to 2 training events per month. I said 2. I'm open if anyone thinks that's too much. It does say that licensed medic or ambulance has to be there. Training shall be restricted to professionals as deemed appropriate by this company. No live ammunition. One place I'm looking for input is the applicant. I had 500 feet. Training shall be 500 feet from all property lines. He does note in his application materials 100 feet for regular activities, 500 feet for high noise impact. That's how I've drafted it. I don't know if those are the right distances. I do have in about the portable toilets, and based on what we heard tonight, I think we should add a sentence that portable toilets shall be set up and removed no more than 48 hours prior to or after a training event. That way they won't stay there. Based on what we heard tonight, I do think we should add a condition saying expansion of this use shall require an amendment to the special exception, and that the applicant shall obtain any and all necessary building permits for any temporary structure. We heard tents, we heard maybe a temporary structure, something along those lines. If that reaches a certain threshold, it would require a permit.
What about any interference with the hunting season?
So perhaps restricting it during the certain...
Well,
I think that, I mean, if he's gonna be there no more than 2 days a month, I don't see how that's gonna interfere with an 85 acre.
maybe like the first day of deer season, or the first day. It's a big deal for a lot of people out here. Yeah.
That's fine with us. We'll work around those dates, it's not an issue.
You want a condition, or you just...
I think so, yeah. There's no training on the first day of hunting season or the first day of
That's squirrel season?
deer season.
That's squirrel?
I would just say deer and turkeys. I mean, those are the two biggest things.
Yeah, the two things on input, I have a question.
If I could ask, please limit their conversation, we've got a lot to get through tonight.
Commissioner Henry made a comment last time, and I had a question. You mentioned a valid forestry plan in place. Is that something you want to?
Well, I think
that's important.
Okay.
But otherwise, we'd be taking it out of agricultural use. So I think, I'm sure there's one in place now. You just need to keep
it was just timber, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then I am looking for input. I do think we need to issue the permit for a time period. And then he would come back for renewal, whether that be 2 years, whether that be 3, 5, I'm open to that.
Are you comfortable with 2 years?
I think he
Yeah, I mean, I prefer 5 to be honest, because as much as I enjoy coming to this courthouse, I've been here like 300 times. So long as we don't stray without outside of what is approved, I don't see why.
5. Give him 5. I think 5 is reasonable. I mean, he's using the property 2 days a month. Yeah. And if he violates his permit, the public, the neighbors are going to come in. So, it's pretty hard to ask a guy to invest this amount of money in a piece of land every 2 years with this point.
I agree with Mr. Henry.
I would be fine with 5 years. I'm not sure, I was going to ask if we've addressed the seasonality, the summer versus warm months. It sounds like the way your conditions are written, it would be any month. Is that right? Is that my correct understanding?
Unless you want to put further restrictions.
Just point out that that is a matter that's been discussed. I think if we've already knocked out hunting seasons, maybe we can address the main issue, and this is a fair weather activity. So I'm personally comfortable with it. I just felt like that was something that needed to be brought to the attention.
He's getting 2 days per month, not 24 days per year that he can use as he chooses. He's clarified that. 2 days per month.
That is how I run it. That is how I read it in
You
its
can't
current
do
form.
24 days simultaneously. It's 2 days per month, period.
Yes, this is no more than one of these.
And I think, with respect to your earlier point, it seems to me that, and I commend you, Ms. Mead, the fact that you state that, there are 2 training events, and that training events are limited to 2 days, to me, is more clear than we often are on such matters, so I appreciate it.
So how are we nailing down the road maintenance?
In my mind, road maintenance is a civil issue. They've dealt with it.
They've made public comments here tonight, and so if they don't follow through with those public comments, when they come back in 5 years, that's going to bear against them.
Any further discussion? I know we don't have a motion yet, so why don't I ask if anyone's prepared to make a motion?
Does the commission wish I make a motion? Do you prefer I read this, or do you prefer we capture it in the minutes as discussed?
Well, maybe I can.
Okay.
Quick, might I ask, I assume that Mr. Blight is he aware of these?
He is aware of these.
Yes, please. Since we've taken some liberties, I'll give you a brief yes.
Okay, just a couple of questions. Mr. Henry mentioned about that he does have the right to build a house and a garage or whatever at some point in time.
Mr. Comas, what's your name?
Yes, my name's Larry Comas, 157 Shergan Lane. Okay? That house you're talking about is strictly a private residence, not where somebody could be housed, i.e. students.
Yeah, just to be clear, he's not giving up the by right uses of the property, which would include residential. So if he were going to do something for hire or some transient use, there are other provisions that would address that. Beyond that, he's eligible to the same rights for how he would use a residential property.
Okay, and last but not least, for these 2 miniature buses, off-road parking, i.e. he's gonna have something as a parking lot built off the road, so the 2 buses aren't sitting on the road somewhere?
I believe that is stipulated in the application. Ms. Mead, is that something you're comfortable with?
I say all uses have to be 100 feet from the property lines. Parking is for the use.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Mead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors, approval of this special exception subject to the following conditions. This special exception is granted for the purpose and/or uses indicated in the RSM special exception application as approved with this application and is qualified by these development conditions. A maximum of 2 training events per month shall be held at the property. Furthermore, there shall be no more than 1 training event per week. A maximum of 30 trainees shall be present for any training event. Training events shall be limited to a maximum of 2 days per month between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday only. Arrivals and departures of trainees shall be restricted to 2 minibuses. A licensed medic and/or ambulance shall be employed for each event with potential for risk or injury. Training shall be restricted to professionals and leaders as deemed appropriate by Risk and Strategic Management Corporation. Live ammunition shall not be used as part of any training event. Training areas shall be located a minimum of 100 feet from all property lines. Those training areas with noise impact shall be located a minimum of 500 feet from all property lines. Explosions, including the use of explosive targets, tannerite, or similar, shall not be permitted in conjunction with the training events. Portable toilets meeting health department standards and receiving temporary privy applications approved by the local health department shall be provided as necessary for training events. Portable toilets shall be set up and removed no more than 48 hours prior to or after a training event. The applicant shall satisfy any applicable Virginia Department of Transportation requirements associated with the entrance. Notification of any training activity shall be made at least 10 days prior to all adjoining property owners. A valid forestry plan shall be in place for the duration of the permit. There shall be no training on the first day of deer or turkey hunting season. Expansion of this use shall require an amendment to this special exception. The applicant shall obtain all necessary building and zoning permits for any temporary structures. This special exception shall be issued for a period of 5 years. include in my motion.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mead. I would just comment, just to be clear, with respect to the earlier exchange on the parking, in the actual condition, it says training area should be a minimum of 100 feet from the property lines. I'm not sure that would necessarily include parking for that. Do you want to clarify that in some way?
I can amend that to say all used areas.
Including parking.
Thank you. Any further, well, I have a motion on the table as amended. Is there
Just clarification.
clarification?
There's like 2 or 3 different days for the first day of turkey season.
You all can handle that.
But then fall comes in twice, I think.
That's fine. You just have to work around the turkey season.
Just do it spring. Why don't we just make it spring, the first day of spring?
Well, as I understand it, there are also several deer seasons. Are we just saying the first of the first? Is that what this really means? Just, we're getting into
I was
these
thinking
details.
about the first day of dry season.
First day of I mean, this is the challenge, trying to fine tune these things.
It's gonna be.
If it helps to clarify, as the game board, typically the deer season come in on Saturday, so unless you're planning on training on Saturdays.
You can't
it would not
train
be
on
effective.
Saturday.
All right, we covered it.
One question for the game warden.
Please, folks, let's.
One question for the game warden, then. Which is a bigger hunting day for deer? First day of black powder or first day of rifle?
Honestly, they're about equal, but Black Powder's been running the higher numbers.
First day of black powder season.
Is that a Saturday?
Yeah, we don't, he said it's Saturday. It's Saturday, they're all Saturdays. So
I removed that condition.
He's not doing Saturdays.
Okay, so we're dropping, that's true for turkey, obviously.
Yes.
So we're dropping the hunting season because it's covered by the Saturday reference. So we have an amendment on the floor, or on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Any further discussion? If not, I would ask anybody who supports the motion that's been moved and seconded to say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is that? Okay. The vote's unanimous.
Clarification, was that 7 ayes?
It was 7 ayes, and just to be clear, the next move is, of course, we only vote to recommend approval. Goes on to, I believe, the supervisors from here.
No.
The next item on the agenda, if I may, is special exception number 180601, John Halberg, applicant Edward Glickman, owner. This is the adaptive use of the Estes Mill property. Ms. Summers, I'd like to tee this up.
Mr. Halberg has applied for a special exception, a permit for an adaptive use of an existing structure as provided by Rappahannock County Code, section 170-69. B, the property is located at 9 Joshton Lane in Sperryville. It's roughly about 5 acres in size. This structure was the old Estes Mill, and Mr. Halberg is proposing to renovate the 1820s mill and have a museum dedicated to the Dulcimer. The museum would be open to the public. As an accessory use to the museum, Mr. Halberg plans to hold live Dulcimer recitals and classes. During the cold months, this would occur within the museum itself, and during the warmer months, on an outside stage labeled on his site plan within your packets. He is proposing a 16 by 18 stage, 2 outdoor shows per month, April through November, for a total of 16 on either stage or at the museum itself. Mr. Halberg has stated in the site plan that he anticipates no more than 200 people at a performance and that it will end by 11 p.m. There will be a dedicated parking area. The Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority, the email was included in your packet, has sufficient capacity to serve this proposed use, and VDOT had been contacted for comment with no response.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Before I open this up, I believe Mr. Houghton, you're here. Do you have anything to refresh? If you've got anything to add, or otherwise just hold tight for questions, but please. Sure.
Got my cheat sheet here because when I get in front of a group of folks, my eloquence sometimes flies out the window, you see. So I'm John Hallberg from Chincoteague, the Sperryville area. So getting a little bit older, and I'm thinking that musical and history and an endeavor like that is something that I really want to spend my time and my money at. No kids, so you know, I'm kind of, never say never, but I'm kind of free to do this at this point in my life. I think preserving musical history is important, and renovating the mill is important, I believe. Actually, I misspoke when I told Mrs. Summers that it was 1840 mill. It's actually 1740. And I was told that the structure right next to it was actually the first business in the county. So it certainly has some long history. I'm in the process of putting together an online Dulcimer museum because I've been collecting dulcimers for many years, and I've got something of a world-class collection. And I've been looking at the mill, you know, just kind of wistfully over the years, and just half a year ago or so, I saw it come up for sale, and just, you know, had this great thought that it would be something that would, you know, serve both uses properly. I don't think that any activities that I want to do inside the mill, meaning viewing artifacts, viewing dulcimers, small live performances in the mill, maybe film, that kind of thing, would be a problem for anybody. And I think it's reasonable to ask for the limitations that I want with a small outdoor amphitheater. I just want to kind of underscore that I'm not going to be having loud rock music there, amplified. May have something like the Gold Top Ramblers would probably be about as wild or as loud as it would get. You know, again, the dulcimer is kind of associated with traditional and old-time music, so generally kind of, you know, a less onerous thing in terms of sound or volume. And also I think this is kind of a particularly appropriate because coming around in 1740, the mill actually was built right about the time the first dulcimers, which is actually a Germanic instrument, was coming over to this country in the early part of the 1700s. So I just find it kind of particularly appropriate in that regard. And I would just also like to say that there will be no music fests on the first day of deer season.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm here to answer any questions.
With that, I will open up the public hearing on this application with the same stipulations. Please come forward, and if you would care to speak, please queue up to a reasonable extent, if at all possible.
Hello, my name is Bethany Bostic, and I'm a resident of the Piedmont District. More specifically, I live on Woodward Road, right between two of the items on tonight's agenda, the museum and the cell tower. I think Mr. Hallberg's idea of turning Estes Mill into a museum/gallery is a fantastic idea. Not only will it be a great way to showcase his large instrument collection and the historical significance of the mill, but it'll also serve as an attraction to Sperryville. I also like his idea of hosting intimate concerts inside of the mill. However, after some careful consideration, I do have some reservations about the outdoor amphitheater. We live directly behind the proposed site, so the impact on us, I guess, will be determined by the number of people, the frequency of shows, the volume, and the ending times. My husband works as the game warden for the county, so he works the majority of the weekends. He doesn't have the luxury of sleeping in on a Saturday or Sunday morning. And there's also quite a few people that I'm assuming are renters that are like directly in front of it. However, as long as the concerts are occasional and at a decent time and are not frequented by hundreds of people, I think it could be a nice addition.
Thank you, Ms. Bostic. Anyone else care to speak? If not, I'll hereby close the public hearing on this application. Ms. Sillo, this application is from your district, but I would certainly understand if you would prefer to defer, but I would leave that to you. If you would like to start us off or defer to your colleagues.
I will defer to my colleagues as well.
Why don't we start over on this end, and since I went the other way last time, Mr. Cole?
There's two lanes coming, there's Josh Ben Lane and then there's the driveway. Is this meant to be like an in and out?
I was thinking that the Josh Ben Lane would serve as the portion that would go to the parking lot and also ingress and egress. Basically, I was going to keep the driveway kind of separate for the house. Josh Ben is the lower one.
Stage, I see it's facing the, towards the mill.
Right.
And you mentioned, would there be, would you be averse to having a non-amplified music, or how are you planning that?
We were thinking probably that it was going to be mostly acoustic electric, meaning slightly amplified acoustic instruments. I mean, that's probably case by case. And the only time that I could maybe see that might be a little different is if, for instance, if I had talked about maybe reinstituting the Rappahannock Music Festival, and that might be something that I would do once a year, and I would probably come to you guys again for that. But I imagine that would be the time that there might be, there's various musicians in the county, and they wouldn't all be pegged into that category. So I imagine there might be some implication if it was that kind of situation. But aside from that, I want to keep it, I don't want to be a bad influence on the neighbors or, anything like that. So.
And how much, I mean, I've driven down here and looked at the site.
Right.
How much parking do you have?
I mean, it's kind of hard to tell for me to tell in terms of square feet, I guess, but it looks like to me it would kind of hold maybe 100 cars-ish.
100 cars?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, but there's some area that I'm going to be clearing out as well. There's kind of some kind of mulch piles, and it's a little overgrown right now, so.
And I saw that you had a nice letter from Mr. Kavarnis.
Yeah.
So unfortunately passed.
Posthumously, unfortunately.
But he was, because he seems to be the main user of Josh Ben Lane.
Yeah, I think it's him and the folks that are in the studios at the back that use that as kind of ingress egress, and I have no problem with that. I think that I've contacted the family. I think there's still going to be a good rapport, good working relationship.
And you'll be living in the house next to the mill?
No, I think I'm probably going to stay at my place, which is back in Jenkins Hollow, and I'll probably rent it out to locals.
That's all I have for the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't close the public comment period. I'm very sorry. You will have an opportunity, regardless of what happens, to speak before the commission, but I'd rather not complicate things by reading. Mr. Henry.
I don't have any problem with the museum part of the application, using the mill to display your instruments. But I think when you go to this amphitheater here, it opens up a whole new category. When I hear that, I don't know how your instruments work, but I guess being antique museum pieces, you're not amplifying them, sticking a plug into them. You're using regular electric guitars and all this kind of stuff, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, when you're saying you, I mean...
Well, the performers that will be playing...
Right.
Not going to be using the type of instruments you have in your museum, so you're going for a different element of customer there.
Yes and no. I probably am going to be, again, kind of focusing, if not strictly on dulcimer, at least on traditional music. So when you say electric guitars, not so much, maybe occasionally, but I think, again, dulcimers being associated more with old-time music, some with bluegrass, some with folk.
But the music will be amplified to some degree.
To some degree, yeah.
So I think this kind of opens up a different category here where you're going to have outside music playing. It's a residential area, and it's kind of in a hollow there going up to 11. that music is going to bounce around Sperryville there. And it's going to be a lot of different people hearing that.
Right.
And that concerns me. And number two, I think your parking probably for the museum part of it was probably okay. But when you start talking about putting in 100 cars into this triangular piece of property, which is got topo issues on one side and the river on the other side, I think that raises a need for a higher authority to tell you how many cars you can really get in there.
Right.
You know, you said maybe 100, and if you was a civil engineer, I would believe you. But I think that raises another element here. And last month, we talked to the police about floodplain along there. And, you know, we're not addressing this here at all. So I'm okay with the museum part, with this amphitheater, putting the music outside and the ramifications of 100 cars and bathrooms for 100 people or 200 people. You know, that's getting to be a big event, you know, big event. So, and I don't know how you plan on, you know, restricting it, whether you're selling tickets, you're going to cut off the admission when it gets to a certain level, but there's a whole gamut of things there that we need to address, and it's going to take time. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Ms. Meeks?
I echo those sentiments. Adaptive reuse is really the reuse of an existing structure. So if it's the museum component and anything taking place inside of there and right around there, but at this level, that's not an accessory kind of thing, this proposed stage. So.
Thank you, Ms. Mead. Mr. Parrish?
How many dulcimers do you have?
Around 60, actually.
Around 60?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they're going to take up, are you going to use the upstairs too, is there?
Yeah, there's actually 3 floors. I'll probably just be using 2 at least foreseeable future.
And then the dulcimers will be displayed around?
Yeah, probably, you know, kind of case cabinet things.
Right, because the only reason I'm asking is, I do have a problem with outside music, but not necessarily with inside music.
Right.
And I didn't know if there would be room inside to have.
Well, I guess one thing that I haven't really fleshed out is, you know, talking with the fire marshal or whoever it might be, to know exactly how many people are allowed inside.
Right.
So, right.
Okay. And then what hours are you anticipating keeping with the museum?
I'm thinking generally weekend hours.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if Mr. Sharp had something to say.
I had something to add, if I may.
You're speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Yes, I'm representing him on the purchase. If it works out of the property, I'm Alex Sharp. And I would just throw out one thing to Mr. Henry's observation. Josh Ben Lane leads to the only industrial property that I know of in Rappahannock County. There's that one and then the one beyond it. And that's the only use that goes back to Josh Ben Lane, I believe.
Right.
And so they have a glassworks gallery, potential for events and so forth. So it's a lot, and also there is the hill that this backs up to. So I don't know if you're playing into the hill or away from the hill.
Kind of away from the hill.
Okay, so there's 211, there's the river, there's Josh Ben Road, and then there's a hill that he would back up to. Now it does, there is highway commercial is the only adjacent property to where he's playing, other than the lady who spoke earlier. But that the music would be projecting towards that, which is right on 211. I think it's like 6 cabins that are rented out to individuals. So I think
he would always have the opportunity to, in the event he wanted a musical event, to apply for a specific event.
Well, and the amplification you're talking about, I understand that question, but it's not going to be solid body electric guitars. It's the amplification, like you see the string bands that play. I mean, it's amplified so you can hear it, but not projecting.
I believe we're going past answering the questions, so thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Parrish, anything else?
No, sir.
Costello, do you care to comment or have any questions?
I lived across from the Blue Rock Inn for a long period of time, and their events that was going on there bounces around the mountains quite frequently when they had events there. So I love the idea of renovating the building and making a museum out of it. I also don't know that I would approve right now the music piece component of the application.
Thank you. Mr. Bird?
It's hard for me to imagine a better use for this building and location than what has been proposed. That if there's the old saying, when you lock a door, whom are you locking in and whom are you locking out? And as far as I'm concerned, what we're saying, music is wonderful, we just don't want to listen to it. And as far as I'm concerned, if we are going to have a significant tourist component to our economy and our county, this is the kind of thing we would want to have. It is rural, it is historic, it is beautiful, it is loud enough to hear, it is in a stream bottom so that there is other noise, traffic, and so that a certain amount of amplification would seem in order and not intrusive. And so I'm looking for a downside here. And other than the one neighbor who is, I think can be worked around in terms of their rights and concerns met, it would be hard to find fault with it.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. I believe that goes back to me. I would say that I believe Mr. Henry expressed my views really to the T. I think the problem with the amphitheater is, okay, yes, we could all accept, acoustic dulcimer music, that sort of, no problem. Then it's, well, mostly traditional, some acoustic, some, maybe a festival. So it would be really hard. I harken back to the turkey season conversation we had a moment ago about how hard it would be for us to start to get into shades of music allowance. On the other hand, I would like to find a way, if we could, to give you enough of leeway to encourage this use, because I certainly agree that it's a great use. I would be inclined to begin with from the position of, no amplified music and see where that takes us. And I also agree with Mr. Henry's points about parking and bathrooms. If we're talking about 200 people, I would strongly encourage you to consider, any of these other festival-type uses to be candidates for a one-time event permit, and perhaps not try to get that opening through this application. That's my view at this point. So, Mr. Henry.
Well, I think I'm going to take what you just said and turn it into peanut butter and jam and make it simpler. I think that maybe we could approve this application tonight as the adaptive reuse of the building, and any issue with the outside amphitheater would be stricken, and then that gives you your go-ahead to do your museum. And if you want to have an inside quartet, music played inside the building, that's fine. You can go ahead and work on that building. And then maybe a year from now, have that one big event, go crazy, have a big event, 200 people there, and see how many people you get upset in Sperryville. And whether or not you want to spend $5,000, $10,000 on a site plan to come in to try to get this amphitheater use. So if you want to try to get your adaptive reuse for the building, I think you're a go for that, maybe, but the other part is going to be tough.
Would it be possible to maybe ask for one event per year as is?
No,
Okay.
not with me. Because you got the traffic, traffic.
Yeah, and with the sort of general nature, again, the amplification, we're not prepared to talk about, how loud is loud, what's traditional music. I mean, I'm not comfortable operating in that space.
Can we do something that's not amplified on like a limited attendance basis or something?
We can set whatever limits, we can recommend setting whatever limits any one of us can move through this body. So I think Mr. Henry has, my comment was that I could go so far as non-amplified music. Mr. Henry is proposing no music.
Well, you still don't know the issue of how many cars the site.
Well, and I would say,
music is one issue, but one is the site, the floodplain, bathroom facilities. We just got into a big debate here on porta johns.
a fair point. I would add those that I think if we're going to even go so far as acoustic music, I think we'd want to do a little bit more on the parking and porta johns as well, going back to your original fine points, Mr. Henry. But I see some opening there, and my concern about your approach, Mr. Henry, is that it might make the prospect infeasible. But that's obviously a matter that is really Mr. Halpern's concern. But I would.
Well, he's got a purchase contract, and he's got terms in his contract, I guess, he has to deal with. And hopefully, an adaptive reuse of the mill gets him over that threshold where that's the most important thing to him. Is it? That is most, can you live with what we're talking about?
Yeah, although there's also, I assume you've all been by the property. The front of the property almost acts like a little, it has a poured concrete slab in the front, almost acts like a little stage as well. So I don't know if there's going to be something where I could maybe do quote-unquote outside shows then on that, having that as a small stage. I don't know if that's something about.
It's like being, kind of like being a little bit pregnant all the way through.
Right, exactly. Binary digit, right.
I don't really have a problem.
Maybe unamplified.
Perhaps, I believe he has sewer access.
Yeah, we do.
As I recall, there's sewer access. So, bathrooms could certainly be, I'm presuming you're going to have bathrooms in this establishment?
Yes, sir.
So you have bathrooms. Are you going to be ADA compliant? ADA compliant?
Yeah.
All right. And if it was limited, at least in this permit, to a certain number of spectators, not to exceed some number, I don't know, about 50 or something like that for small events, but anything larger would require a permit.
Yeah, I think the key is whatever we would consider ancillary or what's the term? Accessory to the Dulcimer Museum itself, which I think there's some reasonable leeway in that regard, at least from my perspective. Are we at a point where there's anyone prepared to put forward a motion? I'm not quite clear on what the sentiment of the commission is at this point.
Well, I think all we can really do is approve the adaptive reuse of the building as a museum. Because any of these other uses, whether you put in bathrooms for for visitors that are coming for the music, I think that gets into can you put that in the building? You got to look at the parking. You got to look at we kind of rushed. We kind of got into this situation down there at the there on the property behind the rescue squad. We rushed that real hard that time, and the next month, bingo, it was issues with highway department. So I think prudent planning says that we need to approve this thing as an adaptive reuse for the building. And then if he wants to follow through, he needs to get us more information in terms of a more detailed site plan, showing parking, showing handicap parking, some VDOT approvals. This is getting to be a major issue. Crossing the stream, next to the stream, whether or not he wants to put in a lot of bathrooms or do porta johns. And these are decisions that he has to make. And I don't think we should rush him to make decisions. I don't think we should be rushed to make this. If he can live with the adaptive reuse of the building, we need to approve that and let him come back and address his amphitheater correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Is anyone prepared to put something in the form of a motion?
Sure, usually what we do is that the person in the district makes a motion.
Yeah.
I did warn you
Chairman
about
was
that.
going to not put me on the spot like that.
You'll get used to that.
And, I motion that we approve the adoption of the building with further documentation on the amphitheater to arise at a later date.
So your motion is to approve basically what Mr. Henry is saying, that we approve the building without approving the outdoor music at this time.
Correct, because I don't think we have enough information to go with parking size, those type of things. Property as is.
Great, thank you. That's your first motion. You'll remember it for... do I have a second?
Clarification?
Please.
Sure, I'm understanding your recommendation is to approve the adaptive reuse of the museum building, period.
Correct.
Right.
Do I have a second?
Can I make a suggestion? We add that occupancy not exceed the occupant load of the building.
You know, I believe this gets us into all the internal building things, which I believe would necessarily be subject to a building permit.
It would be, but I think that that's important that we
It clearly is
not
a
load
structure
the
like this.
historic structure more than it can handle.
Classically, mills were the best buildings.
They've got to be in good
of all.
shape.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Any further discussion?
Do you realize how much work this mill needs?
I don't presuppose that it's not going to be a blue penny to do.
No further discussion. I would, is the motion sufficiently clear? I believe we're talking about approving the adaptive use of the building for the museum part only, and with a consideration that the building limit occupancy and visitor limits be established based on the capabilities of the building. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pretty unanimous. Any opposed? No, thank you very much. Again, we're just recommending the approval. You now go on to the BZA, I believe. Board of Supervisors, sorry. I've got a 50-50 shot, and I fail every time. The last item of where we have a public hearing this evening is PWS FU number 18-04-14, the CWS 7 LLC, the applicant for the telecommunication tower. I believe the applicant is here and has a presentation, which I think is appropriate given that he had asked for clarification of some of the technical information. So why don't we start, Ms. Summers, with you, if you would mind sort of teeing this up and bringing us up to the moment on this application.
CWS has applied for a personal wireless service facility use permit to install a 199 self-supporting lattice tower along with antennas and related ground equipment inside a fenced compound. The property is located at 794 Woodwood Road, Sperryville, and is 56 acres in size. The property is zoned agricultural. Within your packets, there was the supplemental package information that was requested by the commission, and Mrs. McCreary is present, acting on behalf of CWS, and she does have a PowerPoint to help clarify some of the questions that were raised by the commission.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Hope Ferry with Community Wireless Structures.
Also here with me tonight is Jamie Dennis, who represents Chantel, a Sprint affiliate in this market, and also my colleague Sheila Garrison. CWS has been developing telecommunications infrastructure in Virginia for over 20 years. We built 55 structures in 14 counties, including a number of structures in nearby Culpeper, Madison, and Fauquier counties. We lease space on all our facilities to all the major wireless service providers, including AT&T, Verizon, Chantel, T-Mobile, and Sprint, as well as a number of local internet service providers and county emergency services. This map shows the location of all the sites that we've built to date. They're all pretty much in northern and central Virginia. I'm here tonight to discuss our application for a use permit to construct a 199-foot lattice self-supporting tower in the Piedmont District. The site is located about 325 feet off of Woodward Road, about a half a mile from the intersection of Estes Mill Road and Route 211. The specific location on the parcel was chosen for a variety of reasons. We chose this spot in order to maximize elevation, which makes a big difference when it comes to the quality of the coverage. We also chose this location because of its proximity on the parcel to Route 211, where we will be accessing eventually fiber and power that the site will need. And we also chose this location because there's existing screening on this part of the parcel. This is a photograph of the site itself, and you can see that the compound would be built in this cleared area, and there are trees all along the perimeter. Michelle, hold up at that spot.
This is the view from the, not from the road, but just to the top of the hill?
You have to be on the parcel, yeah, at the top of the hill. Correct. So what we'll be building here, in addition to the tower, is a 50 by 100-foot fenced compound. You can see it would be, well, kind of see from this photo, it would be surrounded by trees on two sides. And the tree cover along Woodward Road would also provide some additional screening and help to limit visibility. This tower is under 200 feet, so it will not be lit. The site would be accessed by a gravel driveway, which would come in the direction you see in that photo, which would extend from the existing entrance, gated entrance off of Woodward Road, to the site. The facility is designed for the co-location of up to 4 wireless service providers, an internet service provider, and the county's emergency paging system equipment. This is the concept plan that we submitted with our application. It just shows that we've met all the setbacks. It shows the driveway that I mentioned and the orientation of the equipment compound on the site. This is a more detailed drawing of what would be on the ground. It shows that we would have adequate space, again, for the 4 carriers and the county's emergency services radio equipment and generator at the back. This is a photograph that I thought would be helpful. This is a site that CWS constructed earlier this year in Culpeper County near the town of Boston. This is the exact same type of structure we're proposing here, a lattice tower, and it's the exact same height, 195 feet with a 4-foot lightning rod. This is an aerial view of the location of that Boston tower. Just instructed to see that it is also in a cleared area with trees around the perimeter, a very similar type of siting. And just for future discussion, you might also know there are a number of residences in very close proximity to this tower.
So the 380 feet is to the nearest residence?
Correct. That's correct. This is another lattice tower that CWS built some years ago in Madison County, and I put this photograph in here because this one, unlike Boston right now, has 3 carriers installed on the tower, so you can see what the antennas look like at the top. It's a 3-carrier site. The really exciting news about this application is that we have 2 wireless service providers who have committed to install their equipment and provide service from this location. We have Chantel, who is a Sprint affiliate. They are building out the Rappahannock County market for Sprint. This is their letter of intent. And we also have T-Mobile, who is committed to leasing space from us for this site. You also may be aware that in 2011, AT&T had approval to build a telecommunications tower at this exact same location. And because of that, we feel very confident that it's likely that AT&T will come to this location sometime in the near future, perhaps as a result or in conjunction with their rollout of the FirstNet first responder system, which is currently underway. We also have a lease with Piedmont Broadband, an internet service provider who is already active in the county. And about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, the Board of Supervisors of Rappahannock County approved a lease with CWS, should this site be approved, for the county emergency services paging system so that they could install an antenna on this facility. In terms of the coverage that this site would provide, which is obviously important, these are some propagation maps that Chantel provided to us. Again, Chantel is a Sprint affiliate, so we're really looking at Sprint coverage here. The graphic on the left is what the coverage looks like today based on the Sprint sites that are in service, primarily out to 11. And the graphic on the right shows what Chantel is projecting the coverage to be once this new site would go on the air. You can see we have very robust coverage for the town of Sperryville and coverage on stretches of 211, 231, and 522. So it's very well positioned. It also, the propagation map demonstrates that there would be continuous Sprint coverage to the east along 211. The site would connect with the existing silo sites. I wanted to talk a little bit about the view shed. We flew a balloon at the proposed height of the tower at this location back in late March when the leaves were all off the trees, and we flew a second balloon at the request of the Planning Commission at the end of June. We provided a number of photo simulations with our application. I've just included a few here. We believe from the results of the balloon test that the most prominent views of the structure will be intermittent views along Woodward Road. Most of the other views that we could find when the balloon was in the air were from quite a distance away, and in most cases had the original land's backdrop, which does a pretty good job of camouflaging the tower from a distance. This is one of the more, this is again a photo simulation based on a photograph of the balloon in the air in March. This is one of the more prominent views traveling south on Woodward Road. This is another view from a similar distance going the other direction on Woodward Road. And here you can barely see, I don't know how you can see it on the screen, but the tower is in that circle, the simulated tower. And even in the winter, the trees do a really good job from this vantage point, this perspective of screening the tower. And of course, if the leaves are on the trees, you can't see it at all. For one more, Michelle, thank you. This is a view from down 211 near the golf course. It's about 1.5 miles away. This is an example where you could see the balloon, see it in the next photograph, but it's against the ridge line, and you won't see the tower from that vantage point. I thought this would also be helpful in thinking about view shed with towers. These are 3 actual photographs of a structure that CWS built in Gainesville, Virginia. 3 photographs of the same tower, one from 250 feet away, 500, a quarter mile. And you can see that it makes a dramatic difference in terms of, when people say they can see the tower, you might see it, but it's what you're going to see and how big it looks from the perspective and from the distance. We have requested 4 waivers in our application. These are all waivers from requirements in the telecommunications ordinance of Rappahannock County. The first, there's a provision in the ordinance that says that microwave dishes shall not be used. In order to provide cell service at a wireless base station, the carriers need to have both power and telco at the site. The preferred way to bring telco to the site is by fiber, which is the sort of longer range plan. Bringing fiber to this site will be a challenge and some cost, and it will take some time. So in the interim, in order to deploy service here in the county as quickly as possible, the solution would be to a temporary use of microwave backhaul. And so we're requesting a waiver of that for Chantel and T-Mobile when they come on the site. There's some landscaping requirements in the ordinance. There is a provision in the ordinance that those can be waived if there's adequate natural screening, which we believe is the case here, that the landscaping requirements are intended to screen the fenced compound. And between the trees that are on the parcel and the trees along Woodward Road, I don't think you're going to see the base of the tower. So we'd like to avoid that additional landscaping. The ordinance prohibits the assignment of use permits. This use permit will be issued to CWS. We would like to have the ability to assign the permit if at some point in the future we were to decide to sell the asset. And the ordinance has specifics about the type of road to bring to the telecom site, specifies a type 2 subdivision road. Not sure exactly what that is, but we intend to just use a gravel driveway from the existing entrance, which will be much less intrusive than a substantial road. So that's our fourth waiver request. So just wrapping this up, I'm wondering why are we asking you, do I think you should support this telecom infrastructure? And first and foremost, this will bring wireless service to all those who live or travel in this area of Rappahannock County. I think most of us agree that affordable and reliable wireless and broadband has become a necessity. It's not a luxury anymore. This particular location would serve as an anchor for both Shentel and T-Mobile between Sperryville and the town of Boston. CWS is already working with both carriers who have expressed an interest in covering that entire stretch of 522, and we are working with them to identify appropriate locations for that additional infrastructure. But we need to get Sperryville done first. This will enhance public safety by filling what I understand is a critical need by the emergency services folks for an upgrade to their paging system. And probably most importantly, it would be solving that need with private dollars instead of public dollars. It would also ensure that citizens have the ability to communicate with the first responders in the event of an emergency, particularly because landline reliability seems to be declining at a rapid pace. And we know this is a critical and urgent need, and if we can get this moved forward and get it to the board and approved in August, we could probably have this constructed by the end of 2018, after all the other permits and things that we need to do. No location for telecom, very few locations for telecom infrastructure are perfect. This we think is a really strong location. There's minimal visibility. There are few residences in close proximity. The closest residence, I believe, is about 800 some feet away. There's really good elevation at this spot, which will enhance the coverage. And we have access to fiber and power along 211 at this corner of the property. We also have emergency services support for this location, as evidenced by the approval of the lease for the paging equipment to go here. So this telecom facility will provide wireless connectivity that will be used by business, for education, for economic development, for public safety, and to give citizens access to this vital technology. Thank you for your time and would appreciate your recommendation of approval.
Thank you. If I may, just one question before you cede the floor here. The previous application for this site did not call for the microwave backhaul. I think their intention was to rely at that time on the copper, and the prospect of fiber was more distant. So I have two questions. What's wrong with copper, and how long until you expect, or might we expect, or might you be willing to concede until you are off of the microwave and onto the fiber?
Jimmy, he's my technical person.
I figured you had one.
Hi, my name is Jamie Dennis, I'm an engineer for Shentel. So, sorry, the question was how long would be a microwave?
Well, first, why can't you use copper?
So basically, when we look to LTE, the high-speed data, we need the higher throughput, which is provided over fiber. So we need like a gig circuit, we can get that over fiber. The new base stations, the routers that support the base station, pretty much require fiber.
I mean, you're not using fiber at the outset, so I guess you're saying, basically your answer is copper won't give you the LTE.
Yeah, the site will not come up on copper. We need to
And
make
with respect to the,
every single site that, once it's converted to LTE, the high-speed data, a site has to have fiber to get that out. So we've converted over 700 sites to fiber.
and with respect to the microwave being temporary,
Yes.
eventually you'll do fiber to fiber? I mean, is that the intent, to run fiber all the way to the other? And when would that, I assume that's what you're implying, and when would you expect that to take place?
You're saying fiber to the other, the host site?
Fiber to replace the temporary microwave.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, we'll run the fiber as soon as we can get it. We've already reached out to Comcast. We can try to get high-speed fiber internet over there, over Comcast. Verizon's not far. Lumos is also not that far away. We've reached out to them. That is a different team. That's a backhaul team, which I've spoken to.
So
I can't give you a time.
I don't think we have a specific time for
Fair
this.
enough.
And Shentel, the other side of Shentel, not the wireless side, is bringing fiber into the county, to the schools down there on 211. That's still a good distance away. I think what I heard from, I've actually had a conversation about with this Shentel folks this morning, and their intention is eventually, after they get the fiber there, to bring it to the site. But I think the timing is difficult to predict right
Thank
now.
you. I can't answer what you can't answer. Thank you very much. Sorry, I guess you'll have another shot at questions later. I just thought those were some fairly immediate ones. With that, I will hereby open the public hearing on this application. Again, requesting similar considerations as before. Please come forward and write your name, etc. Yes, sir.
My name is Mark Anderson. I live on the FT Valley Road in the Piedmont District. I stand before you totally in support of this tower application. This is a public good, even though it's being built on one person's site, even though several different companies are going to make a profit from it. This is a public good that's going to benefit the southern part of Rappahannock County. Where we live in FT Valley is a wireless desert. There's absolute deadness when you try to use your cell phone. You rely on copper wire landlines that were installed in World War II, maintained by people about that vintage.
Sorry, laughter counts against your time.
I'm not going to get into a lot of technical details, but having attended the Broadband Wireless Committee for a number of times, I can tell you fiber optic is the answer, but it's going to be slow in coming, even down to 11, and I hope you don't hold these people to that as a condition to approving this permit. I will just tell you a story. If you could name a tower, and if CWS did, I would name this tower for Richard Brown. Those of you who remember Richard Brown, he's the poor fellow who sustained an accident to his leg at the bottom of Jewett Mountain. His co-worker tried to get help, his cell phone was dead. He ended up running up Jewett Mountain Road to find a landline to call 911. That's a very steep, high run, a half a mile. He was able to do that. He put a tourniquet on the guy before he left. Fire and rescue responded in 8 minutes, which I think is a pretty good time considering the distance. Unfortunately, the fellow was dead by the time they got there. If this tower had been in place, public service communications improved, cellular communication improved, he would have had a much better chance of surviving. So if CWS will even consider it, I think you should name this tower for Richard Brown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm Paul Kilmar with the Stonewall District. I'm also the president of the Rappahannock County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association. I will say this about technology, getting fiber to a tower will take time, but what's happening in the rest of the world is antiquated pagers like this are going by the wayside, and we in fire and rescue absolutely need these In addition to that, with the cellular service, with our life packs that can be tied to cellular service, would improve our probability of sending out a strip for a cardiac that might save a life if we're able to get it to the hospital and they tell us what they need to have done. So it's beyond just a plain cell tower anymore, but the paging system for us is critical, and our future as we go forward in EMS, it's critical for us to have the cellular technology as well. I urge you to approve this.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore.
Commission members, I'm speaking on my name is Harold Bebop, Piedmont District. I'm speaking on behalf of the Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad. I urge you to recommend approval of the Woodward Tower for the following reasons. Fire and rescue response, as Paul just mentioned, is dependent on volunteers receiving a page on that pager he showed you. If no alert comes out on the pager or on the cell phone, and that's not likely given that we don't have enough cell phone service, there will be no response from our volunteer responders. It's just that simple. Our existing paging system is quite obsolete, difficult to maintain and repair, as was just amply demonstrated after the storm in the last few days. They've been working very hard, and we now have most of it back. It was difficult. As I think you also know, the county has contracted for a new modern paging system, but deployment of that system is dependent on having appropriate talent to put that equipment on. This Woodward Road meets that requirement pretty well. It probably will not reach everywhere given all the terrain that we have to deal with, but I think it would do well. As Paul indicated, cell phone coverage, independent of the paging system, helps us provide better care. And one of the things that we can do if we have cell phone coverage is transmit that EKG strip if you're having a heart attack. That can go directly to the cardiologist at the hospital. The cardiologist can read it, decide what treatment is needed. It's already being set up before we get there. Cell phone coverage also allows the party in the accident to call 911. Previous speaker mentioned one tragic case that I think might have had a better outcome. Other cases, we had one some weeks or some, actually a few months ago, where there was an accident in the middle of the night on FD Valley Road. The poor guy was standing there waiting for someone to come by and offer him a ride so he could call. In the meantime, another car slammed into the back of him and hit the guy, poor guy, waiting for help. So a cell phone would alleviate those kind of problems. One different kind of suggestion is, I've asked many people what they think of the Bienvenue cell phone tower. And 9 times out of 10, the answer I get is, what tower? It's not, it's against the background of the mountain. It's a monopole, just does not stand out very much. So personally, I'd ask you to consider reducing the visual impact by considering specifying a monopole for that location. For all these reasons, urge you to support this application and recommend it to the supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Bebop.
Bethany Bostic, again, Piedmont District, lucky resident right there on Woodward Road. The picture she showed that said with the most visual impact is actually directly across my house, so I really hit the jackpot. I am concerned about the cell phone tower. I understand that it is so necessary that we have a reliable system for 911 and emergency services. I don't argue against that at all. I also understand that attaching that system to an already existing tower would save the county money, and it would also eliminate the need for 2 separate towers down the road. However, like one of my neighbors mentioned in a previous meeting, I do have some concerns about the health, financial, and visual implications. A study conducted by the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy found that 94% of home buyers are less interested and would pay less for a property located near a cell tower or antenna. 79% of those respondents said that they wouldn't purchase or rent a home near a cell phone antenna under any circumstances. I'm just concerned that this tower is going to lower my property value. I'm also concerned about looking at it every day. So I realize that it's coming, and I would like to request that if it is approved, that it's with the condition that it's either a monopole or a stealth tower. I talked to Mr. Curry on the phone yesterday, and he told me there's 7 towers, and none of them are lattice. And I don't think a lattice tower belongs here. I think we want something that blends in. And my husband and I put a considerable amount of money and time into our house. We've added a garage, new roof, new siding, other cosmetic improvements, and we're just trying to protect our investment. So I would really appreciate if you would consider making it a monopole or suggesting a stealth tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boston.
Sure, go ahead, because I can talk. That's fine.
My name is Mike Lucy. I live on Woodward Road as well, but a little bit different from the lady that just spoke. I own the property directly across the street from what they call 794. And if anybody would have seen the balloon test, and in the packet I just passed around on the last page is a picture. You look out, you're going to see off the front porch, looking directly at that tower and all of the accoutrements on it. Kind of off my little speech here, but I don't want to talk against the paging system. I really don't. I'm a former firefighter EMT from Arlington County. I fully understand the importance of the paging system for the volunteers. I think it is needed. The county has known about this for quite a while now, and they've waited until they get up to a crunch point, and they're rushing to make a decision that I think is wrong. If the towers are kept separate, first of all county residents benefit from the paging system. The county residents pay for the paging system. There should be a line item in the budget. This is not new. If CWS is permitted to put the tower on Woodward Road, the county residents still benefit from it, but one family, and maybe some others, end up paying for it due to loss of property value. We've lived here for 20 years and have built 2 places in addition to one that was already there, and I lose quite a bit of value to my property. This is something to keep in mind. The tower is less than 800 feet from our front porch, the living room and 2 bedrooms. The FCC does state that the worst part of a tower is at the top. And if anybody, I don't know if Mr. Curry went up to our house and looked, all those platforms proposed looks straight, I mean, it's not down, it's coming straight into our front door. So there are potential health issues there based on the FCC. What I really want to talk about tonight is I don't consider the CWS application is not substantially in accordance with the adopted comprehensive and zoning plans of the county. Goal number 8 talks about stabilizing our tax base. Reduced property value means reduced property taxes. And the comprehensive plan, principle 1, to encourage agricultural operations, and y'all can read this, I won't read it all. And policy 7, discourage expansion of public utilities and other growth-inducing public facilities into agricultural areas to minimize development. Most people in the U.S. are unaware that once a tower is built, it can go up to 20 feet higher with no public process due to the passing of Section 6409A of the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012. What that means is a 100-foot tower without any input from the county or the residents could be raised to 120 feet. That means that 199-foot tower, if it were to happen, now has to have a light on it. Keep that in mind. The purpose and intent in the zoning code 17108-1 is to locate facilities in areas and in such a manner as to minimize their adverse impact on the surrounding areas. The Shenandoah National Park is part of the ridgeline. It borders our 25 acres. And you can see that. You can see the park right behind the tower. Number 5 under 17108.1, to evaluate facilities as part of a comprehensive plan to provide wireless communication and avoid piecemeal construction of redundant facilities. We disagree with that. We already have cell service where we live. We have good cell service. Erecting a tower at this location is redundant. Thoughtful planning by CWS and the placement of towers elsewhere could probably provide better coverage down to 31, 522, and even further west on 211.
Mr. Luthi, could I ask you 1 minute, please, to wrap up?
Well, I'll wrap up. I'll go right to my hand here. In a letter from Hope McCreary to Gary Curry on June 11th, stated that CWS is unable to move the location of the proposed facility further away from Woodward Road. She stated significant time and money has been spent on this location, including engineering drawings, NEPA screening, Section 106 review, archaeological survey, and balloon test. Rappahannock County decision makers have options to support enhancing the fire and rescue paging system, providing better cell service, and preventing the county's families' financial losses. Why does Rappahannock choose to show concern for commercial enterprises, CWS in this case, financial expenses over the financial burden the county is placing on one Rappahannock County family who has also spent significant time and money for architectural drawings, permitting fees in Rappahannock County, mortgage payments, home equity loans, real estate taxes in the county, driveways, donations of time and money to various causes throughout Rappahannock for 19 years, and you're putting commercial enterprises ahead of us. Why does Rappahannock only show concern for one family who spent a lifetime saving for and building their dream retirement property? Why should Rappahannock County support CWS profits while forcing a hard-working Rappahannock County family to lose income and lose property value when the county has other options.
Thank you, thank you.
May I just close out?
Please, trying to be indulgent, but you're.
Okay, in closing, we again respectfully request the application be denied. It's impossible to move our house, which sits on top of the mountain, directly across from the tower. And I have a quote from the comprehensive plan. To acknowledge this unique status, we, the people of Rappahannock, declare it to be a scenic county, and all goals, principles, and policies will reflect and devolve from this fundamental recognition. And we would like to see this denied at this time. Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak?
Good evening, thank you. I'm Teresa Wood from the Hampton District. Tonight I'm here representing businesses of Rappahannock. One of our part of our mission statement is to advocate for our members. And so we don't take a position on political issues such as a cell tower placement. However, because this is a public safety issue, we felt that it was important that we talk to our members in the Sperryville area. And so we have done that. So I'm just here to report to you what they have to say. And most of them realize this is a necessary tower, that the EMS and fire and rescue need this repeater. And so they reluctantly, for the most part, agree that it needs to come. One of their concerns, of course, is shared by a number of people, I believe, is that their view shed, or what it's going to look like. So what we heard a great deal concerned about was that look. And the suggestion was perhaps a monopole, something less intrusive, something less shiny. I don't know, this isn't my business, but they do support it for the most part, and they do support the EMS and fire and rescue. So again, we're not taking a position, but we did want to let you know what the survey results. It was a very informal survey, by the way, but most of our businesses in the Sperryville area do support the cell tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood.
I'm John Janelle from the Stonewall Hawthorne District. I wanted to speak in favor of this permit. I manage two businesses in one in Woodville, one in Sperryville. Manage Elmwood Farms, which is about a 7,000 plus acre property. And from the north end of the farm, we actually can see the balloon. We rode around and have pictures of being able to see the balloon, but the view of the tower to us is far outweighed by the value of having decent cell coverage in our area. This morning I got a text, yesterday I got a text from a guy we sold some cattle to. He said, we want to come pick them up next Wednesday. I texted the herdsman who's watching over those cattle and said, can you come next Wednesday? I waited. 5 o'clock he got home and got into Wi-Fi and texted me back and said, yeah, that's fine. Well, the other guy's already gone home. You know, so if we're trying to support agriculture, we have to realize we're supporting businesses. And business is done today with cell phones. That's the way cattle are traded, that's the way things happen. And so I think that part of this is, while I completely agree with the safety concerns, I think the other aspect is supporting businesses. I'm in downtown Sperryville with my own business that I run. We have 3 employees and we're trying to run a technology business. While we're there because we have reliable internet. While we're there, we have no cell coverage, right in the middle of Sperryville. So we're right, this would put us right in the area where we have great cell coverage. I think that's important for a town like Sperryville, where we're trying to develop a group of businesses. So speaking in favor of the cell tower, I think you should move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Jen.
I'm Larry Grove from Stonewall Hawthorne. I'm also the president of Sperryville Fire. Just as a note, this is what's called now responding. Without cell service, we don't do this. So at my house, I have to rely on a satellite internet connection to get this, which is about 3-minute delay for this to come into my house. So it's 3 minutes from Woodville to Sperryville that I don't get. The other issue that I have is that we can respond almost everywhere within 6 minutes, pretty much. The fact that there's a whole bunch of Sperryville fire people back here is a testament to how important this is. They don't normally come out this late at night. Unless there's a fire. Unless there's a fire. But the importance of it is that the quicker we get to a fire, the better chance we have of saving either a life or a building. And sometimes, with the way it is now, we just save a basement. And so we would prefer that we put a tower up, make it work.
My name is Virginia Valentine. I'm with the Piedmont District. I actually live at 4 Main Street, which is directly behind Sperryville Rescue. I'm on a hill. I can walk to the rescue squad probably quicker than anybody else can. Actually, I can. But my pager doesn't work in my house half the time. So somebody who can respond to a call within seconds of it coming through cannot get to the ambulance in time to get to a call. And I'm with the fire department too. And that's, you know, I can see the fire department from my house and I can't get there in time if these pagers don't go off. And there, the gentleman said that he can get cell service and he's living near the tower. I don't get cell service. I live right in Sperryville, right on 211 in Main Street, and I don't get cell service. So these are very important things that I really suggest that you support this building. I don't care what it looks like, monopole, whatever, but we really need this for the safety of the people in this county. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Eggers, and we live in the Piedmont District, Thornton Gap Church Road, about a mile as the crow flies from the proposed telecommunications tower. And I speak in support of this tower. We've been the recipient, as 4 weeks ago, 2 of these folks from the Sperryville Fire Department were at our property putting out a car fire. And in the last 10 years, we've had 2 visits from the rescue squad too. So I know how important it is to have good emergency service, and I know that a number of these pages have been dropped, and so I'm very interested in getting them the best service that they can have so that they can serve us. We also are very interested in the view shed. That's why we bought our property. We have a great view west, and on our property we will see this tower. It won't be probably from the house, but I'm very aware of that. But I think the mountains will be a great backdrop for that. I don't think you're going to notice it. We did drive down to Benvenue today to look at that monopole, which I've never seen before. I've never noticed it, but I've heard that there was one there that would be like the one that would be constructed. And we had to really search to find it. We finally found it, but against those mountains, it's hard to see. And I feel that this pole is going to be pretty much the same way for pretty much everybody, with the exception of the movies. We drove up past with the proposed site on 794 Woodward Road, and I do agree they will be harmed by that tower. And I feel bad about that, and I wish there were a way to compensate them. But I strongly feel that a tower for the safety of our community is the way to go.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sally Hurlbert, and I work for Shenandoah National Park. And I just wanted to speak a minute on behalf of the 2 national parks that you have in your backyard. One of them is Shenandoah National Park, and the other one is the Appalachian National Scenic Trail. And we have run a view shed analysis of the view from where this tower will be located. And it will be visible from Skyline Drive, and it will be visible from the Appalachian Trail. Just a reminder that both of these, the Shenandoah National Park and the Appalachian Trail, are both considered Class 1 view sheds. And so they are accorded the highest level of protection of views. And I have to say, of all the views I've seen from Shenandoah National Park, Rappahannock County is the most beautiful view because of the lack of industry, the rural nature of the views from there. So I don't want you to forget that when you're making this decision. We were a little bit disappointed in the balloon test because it was only a 4-foot balloon, which it was very tiny even from Woodward Road. So we couldn't see it from Skyline Drive. We would have been happier with the 10-foot balloon test, just because that's the size of the antennas that are going to be on top of the tower. So we thought that that was a little bit on the weak side. We also thought that the photo simulations could have been done better. They were taken with brush in the foreground. They could have moved the camera a few feet over and seen a much clearer vision of where the towers are going to be. So when Hope, I'm sorry you said the views were not going to be impacted very much. We disagree with that. We think there will be a big impact in the views. So if you do choose to put the tower in, we just hope that you consider that, making it a brown tower, using cordon steel to build it with, something that will make it less visible from the county and from the mountain, because you do have a very special two parks in the backyard. Thank you very much.
If I may, do you have what are your thoughts, if you have any, on the disguised, tree-like tower?
Well, a 200-foot tall tree is going to stand out. That's another option, is lower the height. Does it really have to be the maximum height up to 200 feet? If you could make it 150 feet, it's going to probably make a big difference. So I think you do have options. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Geraldine Bailey. I'm Piedmont District, president of the Sperryville Rescue Squad, a member for over 27 years. So I've seen a lot of stuff in these years. A lot of calls, a lot of times when we weren't able to talk to the hospital, we had to wait to get there. A lot of lives we've lost. I can't say it because we don't have it. But I'm telling you, as a member of that squad, as a member of this community, we need towers. We need this tower to save lives. That's why we're here. It's not a want, it's a need. Think about your neighbor. Think about these people that come out, can't even hear where they're supposed to go. They're putting their lives in danger every time they walk out that door. And then they can't find a place because they can't hear. So I'm asking you, as members of the Sperryville Rescue Squad, Fire Department, or any rescue squad unit, please just raise your hand. Because we need your support. And I want you guys to look at these people. These are the ones that you need. I've been on that other side where I didn't have anybody 27 years ago. And I almost lost my son. So that's why I'm here, and that's what I'm going to do. So please put in your heart, think about your own children. Think about your mother and your father. Because lives count. They're Rappahannock people. Thank you.
I think you've heard my name before, it's Ruthie. And we live across the road from the tower. And I want everybody here to understand, we are not arguing against the paging system. We're not arguing against cell service. Our problem is this tower is the top of the tower, where all of the antennas are, is right in front of our house. And everybody knows that that's the worst place to be on a cell tower. That's where all the danger is from the actual tower. That's why people don't want to buy or rent a house that's directly in front of a cell tower. They really don't. It can reduce our property value up to 24%, that's what we've read. And we also rent the house. That means you are going to impact our income. We want these people to have the paging system. We want the county to have cell service. We just don't want it in front of our house. I hope you understand. I see we got a neighbor here tonight too. It's the same thing. Why can't CWS find another location? Why is the money they've spent different than the money we've spent? Why do they get all the benefits? Why can't we compromise? Why can't we just find another location? Go ahead with your paging system. We support it. That was a firefighter in Arlington. We know. It's important. But it's just as important not to take our life savings away from us. I know this is tough on everybody, but we deserve a little consideration here. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mary Kathleen, and I live on Bryan Road in the Piedmont District. I'd like to take this chance right now to say thank you so much, first of all, to our emergency responders, our rescue squad and our fire department for their incredible service to the community. And I know that they are supporting this application tonight because of the importance of emergency communications, and I think anybody in this room or anybody in the county would support that. I also want to appreciate my neighbors who are here tonight, some of who have had the benefit of the services of our first responders when they needed it, and they also are concerned about communication. I'm here just to say that while I totally recognize and support the need for emergency communications, if I understand this application appropriately, it's tied, the emergency paging system is going to be tied into a cell phone tower. And as I also understand it, if I'm not mistaken, there's an option of not having that, the two tied in together. And so that's what I think we ought to just think about. As I understand it, part of the argument or the benefit of having them tied in together is that to do so will leverage private dollars and not just make it purely a county expense. But I think we need to consider whether that's penny wise and pound foolish for this reason. A friend of mine, just to put it in an anecdote, is a realtor in Fauquier County, and he has several very large, gorgeous farms for sale, and he says he could sell them in a heartbeat if he had one more thing, which is reliable high-speed internet. And if he had that available, then he would have buyers lining up to subdivide those farms because people could work there, they could live there, they could, break up the parcels. It would be a lot more money, which is great, except that you no longer have the big farms. And I can tell you, I know this, that anytime you increase development, commercial and residential development, taxes do not go down, taxes go up to support those services. And so while in the short term we may be saving money to combine these two, if in fact in the long term this increases development pressure in our county, and given Virginia law we're not easily able to say no to it, we will pay for that in the long term, and it may not be cheaper. I recognize, believe me, I have internet service, I live in Sperryville, and I appreciate that, and I know how in today's world, we talked about this in the county a lot, how important it is to have cell phone service, but I do think we really need to continue to bear in mind that every time we get one of these great conveniences that we have in more urban areas and we bring them into the county because they are a convenience, we risk losing something that brought us here in the first place that they don't have in some of those other areas. So I just urge you to bear that in mind as you consider this, and thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Cynthia Price, and I 100% support the Luthies. Never, never, never ruin somebody's life, especially people who are older, who've worked, who want to leave it to their grandchildren, for a cell phone company that goes around making money, trying to go to the high school where it wasn't needed. They already had cell phone service, high-speed internet and all. Thank goodness they're not at the high school. But I will tell you, their big argument is they would be the only telecommunications company in Sperryville, and there's none other around. That's false. Everybody in Sperryville makes a phone call. Everybody in Sperryville
I appreciate if you direct your comments at us, please.
uses a computer. They couldn't do that if there wasn't telecommunications equipment there. There's Verizon DSL, there's Comcast high-speed internet cable, there's Verizon landlines, there's Comcast voice over internet protocol. There are people who get cell phone signals, the Luthies do. You can get it at the schoolhouse and on 211. You can get it out at Harstone, 2 miles past Sperryville. You can get it at the trading post. All you need in Sperryville is a cell phone signal amplifier, cheap. One cost $100. You put it there, it probably would take care of 3 homes and you've got your cell service. Where are the signals coming from? They put amplified antennas pointing at Sperryville and Woodville in this silo across from Little Washington. I was at the meeting. They said the reason we want to do it is to bring service to Woodville and Sperryville. They did. They did. I sent 2 people around the county with cell phones. One works for VDOT, one was a contractor. They could pick up signals in Woodville, at the Scrabble Church, in our yard. My mother can pick up a signal in her home in Woodville on a 100-acre farm. He could pick it up at all these places I named in Sperryville. And granted, we've got hills and dales, and you know, one person may pick it up, he may round the corner, the next person may not. But again, I say, with a cell phone amplifier, which is less damaging than a cell phone tower, which is going to spew radiation even into the Shenandoah National Park. On that map of 5 miles, the wilderness of the park beyond Skyland Drive will get this cell phone tower radiating it. The park keeps cell phone towers out. They make them go through a rigorous environmental review that they cannot pass. They keep them out. Why should we pollute the park? I'm not against technology, but I think there is safe technology and unsafe technology. I don't have time to go into it, but I was educated to the fact that in the 1990s, a lot of fiber was laid all around the United States. It was laid and then regulations lifted off of Verizon and AT&T, and they were allowed to charge all of us more money, $5 to $7 more money per phone bill, to bring fiber to the home. And they collected billions of dollars. Then Ma Bell was broken up. The new little breakups said, we don't want to do that. We want to go with wireless, it's cheaper. It is the cheapest technology and it is the worst health-wise, and there are health effects. It is the worst. The fiber in Rappahannock actually belongs to Rappahannock. Whoever's on top of it, like mowing the grass and all, and it's under there, it belongs to you. Wilson, North Carolina just sued to get ownership of the fiber in their county that Verizon had laid decades ago. It just lay there. We need to do the same. We need to own our own fiber in this county and then bring fiber to the home with some of these billions these companies have collected and never delivered. That's our money. And other people are doing it. Go to scientist4wiretech.com. It explains the whole thing. But I'm not into radiating the county. In fact, on that website they say we have so many towers around the United States. We don't need a single one. What is lack of connectivity? It means you cannot make a phone call. You can make a phone call in Sperryville. You can call 911. Maybe it's a landline. Maybe it's with a cell booster. Maybe it's with your computer. Maybe it's with a satellite, but you can call 911. Nobody, you know, maybe in the woods you can't, but pretty much everybody in Sperryville uses a telephone. So nobody, a lack of connectivity legally means you can't make a phone call. Doesn't mean you can entertain yourself for 10 years on your thing.
I believe you're wondering a bit. Would you please try to bring it to a close?
Well, I just think, I also read her answers to questions and to our comprehensive plan, and I've never seen so much lying. I've never seen so much lying. I would not use this company. She shouldn't have spent the money without asking the neighbors up there. She spent the money for all these surveys and things, and that's what's wrong with the wireless companies. So I say we go with fiber and put up some cell phone boosters, and if you want a signal, you're going to get one. And you're going to get one in Sperryville.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have gotten a real good flavor of issues and the rescue squad, the benefits, the opposition. And we have a lot more things on the agenda, so we're looking at midnight, 1 or 2 o'clock. So I think we've got a good flavor. Unless there's something that we haven't heard, can we put this to a close?
Well, I'm not inclined to close that. I intend to give everyone an opportunity to speak. I will ask, though, that, I agree with you, Mr. Henry. We have heard a lot of these things, and I would truly request that, if you have something new to add, please add it, but please don't.
Tack Pulaski, Piedmont District, Court Gap Church Road, speaking in favor of the cell phone tower, and if there's any truth to the previous speaker that it could go higher than 200 feet and require a light, I would ask that there be a restriction on that so that there could be no light coming in without a lot of phone here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Kirchman. I live in Sperryville. You're the technical guy, right? I want to ask you a question. How close do you have to be to one of those antennas when it's broadcasting as much as it can broadcast to be harmed?
Mr. I'm sorry, you don't have to answer.
I'm sorry.
Please direct your comments to us.
My comments to you are, I am trained in radio. You'd have to be about 18 inches away from one of those antennas for it to hurt you. Okay? So the health concerns are not concerns. That's not my opinion. It's OSHA, it's the FCC, it's the CDC. They use the same guidelines. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Matthew Black at Piedmont. I just wanted to go back to a point that wasn't emphasized earlier, and that is this problem that we're having with the pagers is getting worse. It's not something that's been occasional here and there over the months or over the last year or so. We've noticed that it's becoming worse and worse. So not only are the response times in some cases slower, but we may not get a full squad together. We may have to wait for people to rendezvous. So the system is technically in a weakened state. And so you don't really have a luxury of time, or we as a community, I think, don't have a luxury of time because this system is frail. It's fragile. And so I'm sorry that that's going to put time pressure on all of you, but it's really going to be, and I sympathize with you having to weigh the view shed and property loss or property value issues versus saving lives.
Anyone else?
And I just stand right here.
By all means, make an exception for you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we're fortunate here in our community that we have an all-volunteer rescue squad and a fire company. They're dedicated people, they care about, and they're doing the job well because they love people and they want to save lives. I'm sure that the rescue squad has saved many lives in this county and other counties as well. And the firemen have saved many homes and other properties. And I think now I'm really concerned though, because if the rescue squad, or if they are losing 10 to 20% of their calls, then we're losing lives. And that disturbs me. We lost one life, and I think one is too many. And I think that life is precious regardless of who it is or where they are. And I feel like that whatever we can do, or whatever you can do, and you can do it, try to save these lives and do the best you can, because and improve this application. Because as the cliche goes, the life you save might be your own.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anybody else who has something new and different to add to the conversation? Thank you very much. With that, I will hereby close the public hearing on this application, and with sympathy and understanding, turn to you, Ms. Sillo, who got this in their district and recognized it I will defer to you whether you would like to go first, go last, or wait for everybody else to decide.
At this point, I'll go last.
Mr. Byrd.
I think we're in a situation here that I would characterize as one doesn't make omelets without breaking eggs. And I feel, from what I've heard this evening, we don't have the luxury of time. We have a process that is underway that has been a while happening. Perhaps there are better places to put it that would impact fewer people. I don't know enough to say one way or the other. It seems, I feel very badly about the neighboring landowner, that this is going to be a negative impact on them. It is remarkable to me that there's only one. And that's not making him any happier. But it seems that for the benefit of the community and in a number of different ways, that this is an application that I think that should be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Mr. Parrish,
So I agree that a lattice structure really does not belong in Rappahannock County. And the monopoles that are in the county, the few that are here, are barely visible. And I would like to insist that that would be what this company would have to put up would be a monopole. I'm not sure how many other services they can get on a monopole, but I know it's enough to cover what we need, and also think it's extremely beneficial to all the taxpayers in the county that with this setup, with this contract, we get the 911, we get the basically some cell service, and basically it ends up to be zero cost to the taxpayer because of the rent that we pay is reduced incrementally by how many services are put on there, and we've already got about 3 lined up, so that's all we need. If the monopole is like a sky blue color, you probably couldn't see it against the sky, you can barely see it against the trees, and I would pretty much like to insist that that's the way it goes.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish.
I concur with Mr. Byrd, Mr. Parrish.
So you have Chantel from T-Mobile and Chantel is Sprint. And who's buying Sprint?
T-Mobile and Sprint may be merging with the Justice Department person.
So,
But the good news there is that could happen, and there's a lot of ways that is potentially will unfold, including Chantel breaking off and having its own service. But even if that doesn't happen and the carriers just combine, we know that there will be one carrier that provides, that services all the existing Sprint customers still there. So in no case would we end up with one.
I understood being from the valley itself that there's been a lot of speculation in Chantel stock about the merger with T-Mobile and Sprint because they were speculation that T-Mobile would have to buy Chantel. And so this sounds like this merger with T-Mobile and Sprint is going to somehow affect, maybe you only have one player on the tower?
My understanding, which isn't a deep understanding, is that there are like 3 different ways that can go, and chime in if you know more, Jamie. One of which would have Chantel essentially being separated from T-Mobile. Another, I know T-Mobile can't necessarily compete in the same market if that happens, but you're with Chantel.
It's all rumors. We don't know what they speculating is. It'll be business as usual. We'll continue to wholesale. We'll build the network. We'll build the network for T-Mobile, and wholesale leads it back to T-Mobile. That's a speculation. Now, if it doesn't, if T-Mobile just buys us right out, we turn to T-Mobile. If they don't want it, if they want to split, we go our own way, we sell our own phones, we now have our own stores, we ship to stores, we'll be our own provider.
But the end result is probably one carrier potentially.
Oh,
Well, the way he just described would be two, but it could go to just one. But it would be a combined carrier would service all the existing Sprint customers.
On your maps that's here,
The propagation?
yes, it shows Chantel. Are you all taking over the Sprint operations?
We have taken over some more areas from Sprint. Every year we take over more and more. So right now we've taken over a lot of Northern Virginia. We're going towards Richmond this year.
How about Rappahannock County?
Rappahannock County, I'm not sure how, we'll go up to Amesville, down 229, and we're taking,
So you're coming from Chester Gap, Massey's Corner, Sperryville to Amesville.
yes, sir.
That's all of Rappahannock.
Right. And so the Warrington area will still stay under Sprint.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard this before, and I think that's wonderful news because in your home county, Shenandoah County, every place almost in Shenandoah County has cell phones. Alta Hollows, Bryce, Orkney, Jerome, Fort Valley, every place. And even in the Rappahannock County, the mountain areas there, Burton, all those areas have cell service. So I'm happy to see that you're coming over here, and I think you're going to solve a lot of the problems that they can have in here.
That was the goal when we took over the market.
Fantastic.
Come in and build it out.
I wonder why the supervisors a year ago didn't talk to you all very extensively, because you all have solved problems in rural areas for a long time. Good.
Thank you, Mr.
Do you have any problem with this monopole instead of a lattice?
We prefer a lattice, but it's not, we would go for monopole if that's what it takes to get it.
And,
It's interesting because it does seem, there seems to be a strong sentiment that the monopole is a more attractive structure, and that's really a matter of personal opinion, I guess. There are, a number of people that think that the lattice is less obtrusive, particularly from a distance, because there's light through it. I mean, a monopole is a pole, but it also has, there are platforms that extend from the monopole for the antennas to be mounted on. So it's not simply a pole. And so, you can talk to 10 people and 5 will say, oh no, I definitely prefer a monopole, and 5 will say, kind of like the lattice, because you can see right here that photo of the Boston Tower. Granted, it didn't have any antennas installed on it yet, but I think it looks pretty good. It's light, the light goes through it, you don't really see it. But again, if the consensus of this group and the board is that this county wants monopole, I think we can accommodate that. The height is more important to us than the structure type.
the diameter of the monopole is?
Well, it's wider at the base. I think it's about 6 feet. It
It all
depends.
depends on
It
how many
depends.
carriers you build it.
We're going to build this beefy because we want multiple carriers on it. We want it to be able to accommodate, all the coming new technology, the 5G and all of that. So I think our more recent poles have been about 6 feet at the base and 2 feet at the top. And it's a tapered structure.
And I'm looking at your waivers here. The assignability of permits, I understand the reasoning. Do we have something that whoever would take that would be financially qualified and competent for repairs, to operate, that kind of thing?
I'm fine with that.
That's standard operating procedure?
I believe in a previous version of this request, there was an additional waiver request for bonding, which after some discussion has been removed, so presumably with respect to the bonding associated with removing the equipment, that is part of our program.
And if there's a point, presumably you would still be the owner, if there was a point in the future where this tower is not being utilized.
The ordinance requires that it come down.
It
It's
does.
out of service, right? I think it's 6 months.
Okay, that's my question. And as far as the microwave dish, is there we don't have any time frame on that, when that will be replaced with fiber?
We don't have a time frame, no, sir.
Would you confirm that it would go away once you have the fiber connection? Or would it have just be another use? I mean, what becomes of that in the fiber connection?
We can confirm that the microwave dish goes away. We prefer it to go away, but we've got to make sure we can get fiber.
I understand. I'm not revisiting that question. I just wanted to, didn't want to presume what I thought I understood.
6 months, year?
It's all up to the telco provider, whoever it is, how long, I mean, if it's, it can take a long time to pull fiber out. That's what we don't know.
Fiber from Spragueville up there, or from?
I'm not sure, I'd have to ask the backhaul team. I think it's going to be coming, from what I've seen, is there's fiber coming down to 11 volt point and then stop. And then there's Comcast, there's a lot of options.
There is fiber around
I appreciate it. We didn't turn this into another public session. Thank you, though.
The one other thing I wanted to mention, that, it's relevant, but I do understand that there's a precedent, I believe there's a microwave dish on the tower at the Huntsville Volunteer Fire Department.
It wasn't original, but I'm sure that there isn't now.
And the propagation that you showed, I thought I remembered that you needed a tower somewhere near, in the vicinity of the Rappahannock School or something, in order to make that connection.
That was AT&T's configuration back then. Chantel has evaluated this site, in relation to the silo site to the east and on, as has T-Mobile, and both carriers have come to the conclusion that this site works. We don't need anything at the high school. Both carriers have also committed to go on the tower in Boston, in Culpeper, which, as I was saying earlier, basically anchors that stretch of 522. And both carriers have asked CWS to look at one or two locations on that stretch of road in between for additional infrastructure so that the carriers could cover the entire stretch of road.
You cannot reach without that extra tower somewhere down in the woods.
We definitely need something else in between.
Piecemeal operation. That's all I have at the moment.
Another shot at it.
To answer the question that Mrs. Halbert asked about the view from the parks, the height of the tower that you would have, could it be lowered by any chance, or will that take away the use of the tower?
Well, you make a comment and then you can also respond. I mean, we want the maximum height that we can get. We know that there would be a significant concern about a lit tower, and so that was, part of the reason for choosing this threshold, keep it under the threshold that requires lighting. The way to build out a rural area is with fewer, taller towers. As soon as you lower the height, you lower the coverage, and that eventually ends up with proliferation of more towers. So you're going to put a tower. I disagree with the assessment of the view from the park. They've done an analysis. It wasn't based on what they could see. It's 3.5 miles away. It's a really, you might be able to see it with binoculars or poking up a little bit over a ridgeline somewhere, but it's 3.5, I think you can figure out what something looks like at that distance. And I think the benefit of keeping the height and maximizing the coverage. Plus, we want to be able to accommodate co-location, which is one of your ordinance requirements. And if we were to lower the height for the top carrier, and the second or third or fourth is also lowered, and that becomes problematic in getting additional carriers, additional competition. So, we do want to lower the height.
Can I make a comment about that though? We can see a tower in Green County.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
May I ask a question? This 20-foot addition to the height that was brought up, is that a fact?
That is a fact. But that's a federal rule, federal FCC regulation. But we don't intend to raise the tower. If, I think, and this is a legal issue, and I'm not quite sure how it works. I mean, someone suggested, putting a condition on that it cannot be lit, which by definition would preclude us from raising the height, I think. Again, I don't know exactly how that works and, what preempts what from the federal level, but we would be fine with that condition because we don't intend to raise the height of the tower.
So if we asked for 179 feet and you added your 20?
Well, that is really messy.
Why would we do that over saying no light?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about the light. I don't think she's.
Yeah, we can say that. Say no light.
I think I'd be inclined to say no light.
And the FCC, we have control over that? The FCC?
Well, they would have their legal right to raise it, but they don't have the legal right to put a light on it, so they wouldn't be able to go above the level required for light. So, I mean, as much as the local can stand up to any federal freedom, which is questionable, for that matter, I suppose they can change when they require light. But I think I was going to propose, and I'm sorry to interject, but to me, we should address that issue by specifying if we proceed, no light. That would be my recommended approach to that. I'm sorry, Ms. Silla, were you finished?
Yes,
Any other comments? I guess I think I made my primary point, which is I do think we should go with the light. I guess let me ask also, monopole versus lattice, is there a capacity difference?
A lattice will hold more here, ultimately it's more flexible. But we can design a monopole to get us what we need, or what we can anticipate being able for carriers. I mean, we've built a number of monopoles. We built a number of lattice structures. It all depends on the setting and what we think makes sense.
And do you agree that sky blue is about the most unnoticeable color?
I mean, I don't know that I guess we did paint one all sort of sky blue, one that we had in Warrenton, we did that monopole in Warrenton. We've also done graduated paint, where you paint the bottom, brownish, greenish, and the top blue. Problem with that in an area like this is it depends on where you're standing.
Yeah, it's like even blue on the leafy side, brown on the other side.
It depends on your perspective, so I'm not sure that's all that effective. The sky blue does take care of a lot of those, long shot views, and it softens the glare. So that somebody's mentioned shiny, not having it shiny, so it would accomplish that. That would probably be my recommendation if that's what the painting is.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Well, folks, I know it's getting late, or is anybody in a position, my commissioners, to put forward a motion? So, first to you, the understanding.
At this point in the juncture, I've heard all the discussions, but I'm not comfortable making the motion outright, so I'd like to turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Exercising the chairman's prerogative, I will once again turn to, does anyone else care to move this application?
Well, I'll go ahead and do that. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for this application under the condition that there is no light to be put on the structure at any time, and that they construct a monopole structure.
Color?
I'm just going to say sky blue. Unless it is better. I really don't know. Unless it's better to paint darker to graduate up to the sky blue. But I do know a lot of that view, especially from the neighbors, is against the sky. The closest neighbors, the view is against the sky, and they would be the least impacted with that color.
I guess, Chris, the only thing I would defer to there is that I would ask the park what their opinion is, looking at the tower from the front.
In terms of color?
She recommended brown, I believe.
And then Mr. Parrish, how about the exceptions that they asked for?
That, the waivers, looks like we're stuck with the microwave until we have the cable. I don't really see any need for additional landscaping. Sometimes that's even more obstructive than the actual landscaping. The permit, to sign the permit, I suppose that, we're protected against, I mean, of course, I'm immediately suspicious that they've already got a buyer, but I guess that we're protected with a bond or any of that. And then in terms of the lesser road, I think that's a benefit. I think it would be less obvious. Just the least amount of road that they can possibly get in there would be the best, I believe, because you would see it driving down the road. You look over in the field, you will see it. So I got really no big problem with the waivers. I mean, unless they assign the permit, we're just protected against whoever needed for your service.
I mean, the ordinance already has a provision that allows them to transfer it to someone who's a carrier on the tower.
Right.
I'm having trouble understanding what the intent of that prevention is. It would be sort of natural for it to possibly transfer, but
These companies sell their towers all the time. They package them in 200 or 300 rolls.
I mean, if the other requirements convey, I don't see why.
It's just a normal course of business.
All right, thank you, Mr. Parrish. I believe we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify. Actually, why don't we do a roll call vote on this one, just because. Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Ms. Sillo?
Aye.
Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
Ms. Mead? Henry?
Aye.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So, thank you very much. And we have some other items on the agenda. I suspect many of you would like to probably leave at this time, so I'm going to take a brief 5-minute break about to clear out. And I would ask if you're going to talk, that you do move out so that we can resume our business. Take these items in order. Again, we won't be having any more public input. Remind folks, for the most part, these are our preliminary reviews for some of the new applications, given the interpretation of our code and recognition that the code suggests that we take a two-step approach with these. The first item of the new business is the 5-year review of Mr. Williams' special use or special exception permit 070501. There's been some discussion around this evening. I believe the matter before us is part, at least, whether we feel the need for a public hearing to move this forward. If we have other questions for the applicant or other matters, without further ado, Ms. Mead, I think this is in your district and hope you're prepared. Oh, I'm sorry, maybe you want to tee it up, Ms. Summers, thank you.
Thank you. Back in 2007, Mr. Williams obtained a special exception permit for a contractor's shop yard office with proffers. In 2012, that permit was up for a 5-year review. There were amendments made to that special exception that eliminated the screening. It addressed the number of vehicles on site. It eliminated a proposed building and it reduced the setbacks. The board did renew the special exception again with another 5-year review period, which was up in 2017. The planning commission can decide to hold a public hearing for review. They can decide to go ahead and pass along the recommendation to the board of supervisors for their public hearing. It's at the pleasure of the commissioners. Mr. Williams is present if anyone has any questions. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Williams, if you're prepared to make any comments at this time, you know, you're ready to be available for questions.
Just available for questions, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. Sorry, back to you, Ms. Moore.
Sure. I do see this one a little bit different than the next two items on the agenda, which are a preliminary review. This one does say a 5-year review. It didn't appear to me that it had a time period, so that we're revisiting the land use decision. These decisions were made before my time on the board. Mr. Williams called me yesterday to see if I had any questions. I let him know at that time. I understand some of the concerns that the neighbors have about the appearance. However, that public hearing was held in 2007, that land use decision was made. It was made again in 2012 with less restrictions. The surrounding area has not changed, so I don't see any reason to reopen another public hearing. It's not the planning commission's job to do enforcement. If he was not in compliance, at any time the county can start that process of enforcement. To further add on to that, the memo from the board said the board recommended we review the planning review the traffic. And what we've heard tonight is there are some concerns about the traffic. So my recommendation would be that we recommend to the board that they petition VDOT for no through trucks. But as far as a permit, I don't have any.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Want to go this way?
I concur.
Mr. Cole.
I've looked at all this very carefully. I think that Ms. Mead is right that we don't need to open a public hearing on this. It does seem that the traffic is the main concern. I don't know how to address that traffic issue yet, but I'm open to suggestions.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
I agree with everything said so far. It does seem that the traffic situation is this one particular aspect of the situation that is most demanding of either at least inspection and or change. And so perhaps bringing the Department of Transportation in on it would be a way to get started. And because it is a narrow road and turning in, turning off, and a lot of people live on that road.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Ms. Silva, here to come.
I'm in full agreement that the permit is what the permit is, and we just need to move forward on that, but to bring in someone else who has the knowledge of the traffic would be highly beneficial.
Mr. Barrett?
Well, I mean, of course, I drive by there a lot, but yet last night I went by there, and I will say, as far as wood piles go, it's pretty neat and tidy. But pulling into the entrance, I mean, it is kind of a curve there. See how that's an issue, and I really don't know if there'd be any other way to improve the entrance for safety. I do think that Mr. Williams may be blamed for some semi-traffic that's actually not going to his lot, and I do think that it's possible that there are some logging trucks that are, instead of going about 211 and 522, they're actually going through, maybe their GPS is taking them up 729 there, I don't know, but I tend to ask about getting it on the agenda for the supervisors to actually petition VDOT to close that road to through semis. I think that would really help the neighborhood a lot. There's no need for that unless they're going to a specific location on that road. So, yeah, other than that, I concur with what everybody said.
Thank you. If I may, maybe, Mr. Williams, I don't know if you've had an opportunity, I don't want to put you on the spot, but on the other hand, if you had anything to say about the entrance, with the trucks sort of having to stop and do things to get in there, have you considered any improvements to that entrance or egress?
Yeah, I'm not sure which of my permits I went through, if it was the 7 or the 10 or which year it was. That entrance had to be brought to VDOT specs. That entrance was engineered by VDOT and supervised by VDOT when we put it in. We had to dig it out, dig half, I don't know, further than here to the wall, back into my driveway, put an apron in, bring it up. We dug below 729 to bring our road up to par. And the site distance was measured by the VDOT supervisor, whoever was in charge of that at that time. And I think it was Robbie Sutter, but I'm not 100% sure. And it was determined to be more than, way further than adequate distance when sitting at the entrance. But again, I would have to see, one of those permits had it that I had to bring the entrance up to specs. I don't know if that was a requirement, and then I accomplished that, and we haven't dealt with it again since then.
Okay. I understand and appreciate that, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I think that was really about visibility leaving the property most likely, and I'm not sure that that would address the issue of bringing kind of larger trucks.
We got to address both
We actually had to widen the apron itself, so it brought you further north on 720, gave you more access further north. That's why I'm so wide there.
Thank you.
That doesn't address the road itself.
Thank you. It does not, but we're not, I think we've taken the public comment.
Thank you.
Ms. Mead, we'll defer to you if we're ready to propose any kind of action on this.
My motion is that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they petition VDOT to potentially look at placing a restriction on no-through tractor trailers.
And otherwise recommend continuation
Yes.
of the approval
Yes.
for another 5-year cycle, or, it seems like we've been in this
Probably 10 years.
Yeah, I'm not even, my motion isn't a time limit. If you all want to add it, you certainly can, because again, you have a time limit to see if the area changes. And this is a rural area, it's not slated to change. It's really, you don't put it down there for an enforcement purpose. Should someone want to amend that motion, then certainly.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. We have a motion on the table.
I would ask to amend it to lift the timeline factor on.
Mine didn't have time.
Oh, no time, so you lifted the time.
Yes.
No, there's no, I would, sorry if I confused that, I was just clarifying, we had a time factor.
Okay, that's it.
I'm sorry, point of correction, I'm confused here. Are you requiring a time limit or not?
The motion on the table is to recommend approval of the continuation of the permit, which without further requirement for another review, by absence of that requirement, means it would be like any other special permit, which would be in perpetuity. I believe we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
May I ask a question? I saw a picture of a truck, a large one, log truck. It looked like it was backing in. Did it back into your entrance, or did they?
Sometimes, depends on what the driver wants to do. Some of them back in. To get off the road, you're not supposed to back into the road. You can back out of the road by VDOT law. You can't back into the road unsupervised. So a lot of them will pull past it and back in on the driver's mirror.
Any further discussion?
Not this moment.
Well, you don't have much more time.
And are all of your other requirements being met? Setbacks and things like that?
We took the screening away. The setbacks are good. The vehicles were limited to 7. So.
I would say that I would go back to what Ms. Mead said, that if there is an enforcement issue, it's really a matter of, for another body. We certainly don't have, the screening and some of these questions about the contractor yard. I think that is confusing because it has to do with the changes in the use. Originally, there was a structure and there was a garage facility that led to some of that characterization. You know, when that went away and this actually became a less intense use with the facilities moved out to 211, I'm fairly confident that we would have moved it in this current fashion. But in any event, that's neither here nor there. We're here tonight. We have a motion moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Am I allowed to ask a question?
No, you are not. I'm sorry. If I may, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye.
So that's 7-4?
Yes.
7
Seven unanimous, as I understood, right?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just for my record, this lady right here in the back.
I just scratched my
She just gave me the finger purposely.
The way you just sat there and smiled at me.
I just want.
The way you just
Thank
sat
you.
there and smiled at me when she made her motion.
Fine,
There you go.
please, we've got more work to attend to. It's
We
getting
need
late.
to
I know we're off
control
track.
Mr. Henry's actions as
So,
well.
the next item on the agenda is the preliminary review of special exception 1803-20, the Cliff Miller Rappahannock University technical school. Ms. Summers. Please, if you would, we still have miles to go. Ms. Summers, would you like to tee up the review application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Rapids lease is coming to a close at their current location at the trading post, and they're looking to relocate at the Miller property located in Sperryville. The applicant is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. You want to make any remarks, or?
No, I'm just here. I represent Rapid as a board member. We have three board members here, myself, Doug Schiffman, Kathy Grove.
Appreciate your patience this evening. I hope that
Well, this is just a
majority
review.
of the meeting.
And we did receive, I think Michelle received a copy, we received VDOT's approval letter today.
Yes.
So we have all the approvals that we need of those approvals.
Thank you. Ms. Sillo, baptism continues here. If you're so inclined, would you like to start us off or defer on this one?
Defer, please.
Okay. Mr. Byrd.
I don't see any reason not to let them move. This is to the schoolhouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
From school to school.
The classrooms in a schoolhouse.
In the old school rooms.
Yeah.
That's it. Very well. Mr. Parrish.
Thanks. Great application. Thanks for your for the recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Mead.
Let's hold a public hearing.
Okay.
As a point of clarification, I know maybe this is not prepared, I'm still ambiguous on whether we must do a public hearing. I believe we probably are not compelled to do so. Just to make sure.
If we're not compelled to do a public hearing, I think we should just recommend approval. Go on with it.
I mean, it would be some consolation for the long wait.
What are they, is it a special use or a special exception?
A special exception.
So it would go to the supervisors?
Correct.
And we do not have to hold a public hearing on the exception.
The board would hold the public hearing.
And I changed my position. I don't know.
Mr. Henry, are you still good?
I'm good. I'm good, it's perfect use, it's just, you need to get this to move along.
Yeah, I'm surprised it even required coming in. It seems odd to me. So we're all in good shape. I don't think we have a motion. Ms. Sillo, I'm sorry, I didn't go back to you. Do you have anything to say, or are you prepared to make a motion on this one?
I make a motion for us to go ahead and
Recommend approval.
recommend approval for the board of supervisors and the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Let's move to the preliminary review of the special use permit 180701, the Susan Cox Tourist Home. Ms. Summers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cox and Mr. Davis have proposed to operate a tourist home of just their one guest room. This is located in Sperryville at 18 Water Street. The applicants are present if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Anything to update or revise?
Just a technical point, only one of the applicants.
Yeah, my husband.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the, as you said, just the guest room. No more than 2 people.
Thank you. Ms. Stillo.
I don't have any questions to ask unless anyone else in the board.
Mr. Bird, do you want to opine on this one or ask any questions?
Despite the fact that all of these are competition to me and my tourist home, I think of them as a good and proper use.
Thank you. Mr. Parrish, do you have anything?
Are you going to be there when you rent it out?
Probably not, because it's
It's a tiny house, yeah, and the guest room is like right smack in the middle.
yeah.
And so, so your main bedroom would be locked, and then you would have, they would pretty much have the run of the house if you're not there, yeah. Okay.
Henry? Cole? I believe you may have implied an answer to my question. I take it this is not your primary residence? Or is this your
Not
primary?
yet, I want to retire here.
But right now, it's a weekend place. So you would expect to continue to do this when it is your primary residence?
No,
No, okay.
no,
So
we
this
have
is-
just twice a month,
Okay.
and I would come and clean on the other weekends. That's how I'm envisioning it.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Ms. Sillo, it has been customary that when we recommend approval, or I guess this one, well, again, we're on a roll here. We could, if we see fit, this has not been advertised for public hearing. I think we have the same prerogative that we did on the last one. I would also note that if we were to decide to recommend approval at this stage, we have been traditionally providing a pretty standard set of conditions that I believe we have at our disposal. So if you'd be inclined to make a motion, I think it would be a good time to hear it.
So just to clarify that I can say that no public hearing at this point, I can just recommend it to the board supervisors, as long as they are stipulating with the previous.
The Board of Supervisors will have to do.
Board of Zoning.
Board of Zoning. Would do a hearing, but we don't have to hold up our recommendation if we feel we have enough information to make our recommendation. But it's also, if we don't feel that we have enough recommendation, or if we feel that our view could be significantly altered by public input, we have every right, and you can make a motion that we proceed to schedule a public hearing, if that would be your pleasure.
No, I do not think we need a public hearing. I think there's enough homes that follow the same guidelines that it would be fine just to go ahead and propose for us to move it to the board.
Thank you. It's a little awkward. Does anyone have the standard conditions at their fingertips so that we could incorporate them into a motion? I think we could get pretty close without reference, but it looks like Ms. Mead, as usual, you are perhaps ready.
Yes, I would suggest we recommend approval subject to the maximum number of guests at any time would be no more than 2 people. The rental unit shall contain the following: working smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, working fire extinguisher, an emergency contact list to include the address of the rental, or emergency response person, sheriff's office, home phone number, owner's contact information, and the permitted noise levels.
And no more than 2, and other stipulations in the application?
The no more than 2 came from their application.
Yeah.
It said 2 to 3 times a month, so if you want to condition that, we could say, do the standard condition in accord with the materials submitted with the application.
I'm inclined, I think it's generally good practice that we refer to the description in the application.
And I add that.
Thank you. We have a motion, is that sufficiently clear? We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. The next item is, I guess, a presentation of some of these matters referred to from the Board of Supervisors to us to take into consideration with respect to the zoning ordinance.
Given the time of day, I'm just going to hand you this memo and I'll let you read it in your own time, and then I'll let you
Thank you.
talk later another time.
Thank you.
I believe he is. I think he's going to hand that last one.
You have the door. You want to stage right? So these are matters that have been discussed by the board and wanting the planning commission to consider. I do note under the paragraph in the back, and forget that, not deeming this to be direction to the planning commission to review these in accordance with 2285B, i.e. get an answer back within 100 days, or we'll assume he said you're all good, because they're really not particular recommendations. But if things take a long time, the board may formulate a resolution and you get your 100 days.
Great, thank you, Mr. Curry. I'll take that as a good segue to perhaps just briefly address these items of old business. Several of us were here for a 4-hour work session where we did review the May amendments, deciding that some were ready to be put forward and others were not. We agreed at that time to continue to schedule some specific ad hoc work sessions around that and to work with staff to, particularly on the area related to transient lodging and some of those definitions and requirements that have been under discussion for some time. And so that's essentially what we're going to do. I will be in touch about scheduling another work session on that. Similarly, those of you who were here will recall that we did review all of the data and demographic information that was prepared and assembled and synthesized by the Rappahannock Planning or Regional RRC. We reviewed those items. We looked at the extent to which we thought they would influence policy. There's some interesting information. There's some valuable materials both for us and for other public bodies. We had a discussion about how that material could be incorporated into the chapters 1 through 4 as appropriate, and I believe Ms. Summers is on her way to doing that as a next step. So that's sort of a status report on those old business items. Anybody have any questions or anything to add on either of those? If not, then I believe that brings us to our last item, which is to adjourn until our next meeting on August 15th. Can I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor, stand up and go home.